2023. To enable public participation, SFGov, excuse me, can we please have silence in the chambers? Thank you. To enable public participation, SFGov TV is broadcasting and streaming this hearing live, and we will receive public comment for each item on today's agenda. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes. When you have 30 seconds remaining, you will hear a chime indicating your time is almost up. When your allotted time is reached, I will announce that your time is up and take the next person queued to speak. We will take public comment from persons in City Hall first and then open the remote access lines. For those calling in remotely to submit their testimony, please call 415-655-0001 and enter access code 26615656198 ##. You should be able to listen to the hearing live. Please wait for the item you're interested in speaking to and for the public comment to be announced. To comment, you must press *3 to raise your hand. Once you have raised your hand, you will hear the prompt, "You have raised your hand to ask a question. Please wait to speak until the host calls on you." When you hear you are unmuted, that is your indication to begin speaking. For those joining via WebEx, please log in via the link found on today's agenda and enter passcode CPC 2023. Use the raised hand icon to ask a question. You will hear a beep and then see the prompt that the host has unmuted you. That is your indication to begin speaking. Best practices are to call from a quiet location, and please mute the volume on your television or computer. For those attending in person, please line up on the screen side of the room to your right. Please speak clearly and slowly, and if you care to, state your name for the record. Finally, I'll ask that we all silence any mobile devices that may sound off during the hearings. At this time, I would like to take roll. Commissioner Braun.
Here.
Commissioner Ruiz.
Here.
Commissioner Imperial.
Here.
Commissioner Diamond.
Here.
Commissioner Koppel.
Here.
And Commission President Tanner.
Here.
Thank you, Commissioners. We do expect Commissioner Moore to be absent. This will now take us to your continuance calendar. Item number 1, record number 2023-005134 CRV, Downtown Conservation District's Design Guidelines, with a proposed continuance date to October 5th, 2023. Item number 2, record number 2021-010176 CUA at 2261 Fillmore Street, with a proposed continuance date to September 29th, 2023. Item number 3, record number 2020-001105 DRP at San Gabriel Avenue has been withdrawn. And lastly, Commissioners, an item from today's agenda, item number 16, has a request for continuance, record number 2021-003953 CUA at 2340 Vallejo Street, with a proposed continuance date to November 2nd, 2023. We will now take public comment on the continuance calendar. Members of the public wishing to make public comment on the continuance at this time must do so now. Please note we are not accepting comments on the projects itself, but will accept comments on the question of whether to hear the item on another date. If you wish to make public comment, please come forward now and line up on the screen side of the room to your right. For those calling in remotely, please press *3. For those joining via WebEx, please use the raised hand icon. And you will have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. I'm representing Jenna and David Lieb, who own the property at 615 Sanchez at the end of your calendar. I understand that Sue Hester will be calling in and asking for a continuance for this matter. She didn't let me know. She hasn't been involved in this case. She hasn't filed a brief. I understand she may not be well. I certainly hope for the best. But my clients feel that if she's calling in to ask for a continuance, perhaps she's well enough to call in for the 5-minute presentation she would have on a DR requester. But we hope she's better. I think we need to ask her who she's representing. If she's representing the adjacent neighbor, the most affected one, Sammy Host, then she's representing someone who hasn't requested if she's representing the owner of the building at 619, then she's representing someone who is not a DR requester, and I don't think she should have standing to ask for that. As a member of the public, really shouldn't be concerned with continuances. If she's representing the owner of 61 of the adjacent property, which is owned by Sammy Host and her LLC, then why isn't the client here in lieu of Ms. Hester and making a case? If one DR requester is available today and the other has her attorney sick, we don't see why the DR requester, who doesn't have an attorney who's sick, can't go forward today.
Excuse me, Mr. Gladstone, I'm just going to stop you for a second. I think we will take that item at the end of today's hearing under the discretionary review calendar, but at this moment we have requests for continuances for the items that were called, so we're asking that we only speak to those items at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'll have my chance later. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public?
Good morning, afternoon. Thierry Phil here. I'm not sure. Make it clear for me. Item number 2, which is about the Clay Theater on Fillmore, so it's for continuance. It means that it doesn't matter what I...
So right now you can only speak to the topic of hearing the item on another date, not necessarily the project itself.
Right now, it's proposed to not be heard today, and instead, we would have a hearing on September 29th about
So
that
I should be
project.
back on September 29.
If you'd like
Nothing's going to happen until then, right?
Well, if this body approves continuing it to the 29th, then nothing will happen until the 29th.
Excellent, because we need to save the theater. Huh? I guarantee you, Mayor, you love movies, so that's it.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Any other comments on the continuance calendar? Seeing none. Commissioners, the public comment is closed and the continuance calendar is before you.
There a motion on the continuance calendar? Commissioner Imperial?
Continue all items as proposed.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioners, there has been a motion that has been seconded to continue item number 1 to October 5th, 2023, item number 2 to September 29th, 2023, and item number 16 to November 2nd, 2023. On that motion, Commissioner Braun?
Aye.
Commissioner Ruiz?
Aye.
Commissioner Imperial?
Aye.
Commissioner Diamond?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
And Commission President Tanner?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners. That passes unanimously, and we'll take you on to your consent calendar. All matters listed hereunder constitute a consent calendar, are considered to be routine by the Planning Commission, and may be acted upon by a single roll call vote of the Commission. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the Commission, the public, or staff so requests, in which event the matter shall be removed from the consent calendar and considered as a separate item at this or a future hearing. Item number 4, 2022-010633 CUA at 1938 Ocean Avenue. Item number 5, 2023-002340 CUA at 999 Valencia Street. Item number 6, 2022-001539 CUA at 4200 23rd Street. Item number 7, 2022-003304 CUA at 326 27th Street. And all of these are requests for conditional use authorization. At this moment, we will take public comment. If there are any members of the public wishing to remove any items from the consent calendar, you may do so at this point. If you're in City Hall, please come forward. If you are calling in remotely, please press *3, and those joining via WebEx, please use the raised hand icon. We have one remote caller, and we'll take that caller now.
Yes, hello. This is in regard to item number 6.
Okay, and are you requesting to take this off of the consent calendar?
Oh, no, I'm not asking to take it off. I was just calling to make a comment. Is
Okay.
it not the right time?
If we would only take formal public comment if it was removed from the consent calendar and heard formally. So if you do not wish to remove it from the consent calendar, then there would be no public comment.
Okay, I'm not asking to remove it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
No problem. Seeing no additional requests for public comment, the public comment is now closed and the consent calendar is now before you.
Commissioner Koppel.
Move to approve item 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioners. On that motion to approve items 4, 5, 6, and 7, Commissioner Braun,
Aye.
Commissioner Ruiz,
Aye.
Commissioner Imperial,
Aye.
Commissioner Diamond,
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel,
Aye.
and Commission President Tanner.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes unanimously and will take us to Commission Matters and the Land Acknowledgement.
Thank you. The Planning Commission acknowledges that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush Ohlone community and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. That will now move on to consideration of adoption of draft minutes for July 13th, 2023. Let's take public comment on the draft minutes. Members of the public, please come forward. If you're calling in remotely, please press *3 or raise your hand via WebEx. Seeing no individuals wishing to speak, public comment is closed and the draft minutes are now before you.
Is there a motion on the minutes? Commissioner Braun?
Move to adopt the minutes. Second.
Thank you, Commissioners. There has been a motion that has been seconded to adopt the minutes from July 13th, 2023. On that motion, Commissioner Braun,
Aye.
Commissioner Ruiz,
Aye.
Commissioner Imperial,
Aye.
Commissioner Diamond,
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel,
Aye.
and Commission President Tanner.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously and will take us to Commission comments and questions.
Are there any comments or questions from commissioners? All right. You got off easy this week, Rich.
Great. Thank you, Commissioners. We will now move on to Department Matters. Director's announcement.
Hi, Commissioners. Rich Sucre, Deputy Director of Current Planning. We have no announcements at this time.
That will now take us to review of past events at the Board of Supervisors, Board of Appeals, and Historic Preservation Commission. I am not seeing anyone here for the Board of Supervisors report, but
oh, sorry.
you have it?
Yes.
Okay.
So, hi, Commissioners. Rich Sucre again. I'm here for Aaron Starr. Obviously, I am not Aaron Starr, but I am reading his report. This week, the Land Use Committee took up the duplicated file for the Small Business Month fee waiver. Commissioners, this item was duplicated so that the duplicated file could be amended to include the Planning Commission's recommended modifications and then re-referred back to the PIC for their reviewing comment and recommendation. The Planning Commission heard this item on May 4th and unanimously recommended approval with a modification to expand the program to all signs applied during the month of May, not just awnings or signed copy on awnings. Supervisor Ingardio included this amendment in the duplicated file that was considered at land use this week. However, at the suggestion of Supervisor Chan, the expansion of the fee waiver will only apply for May 2023 and May 2024. This week, there was little discussion and no public comment, and the item was forwarded to the full board with a positive recommendation. Next, the committee took up two ordinances at once, the Development Impact Fee Indexing Ordinance and the Development Impact Fee Reduction Ordinance, sponsored by the Mayor and Supervisor Peskin, respectively. Commissioners, you heard these items on July 13th and recommended approval with modifications for both. For the indexing ordinance, you recommended eliminating development impact fees assessed on changes of use throughout the planning code. And for the development impact fee reduction amendments, I'm not sure if you read all of that, but the amendments included applying the reduction of section 415A and 415B to inclusionary projects of all sizes, not only to projects with 25 units or more. 2, authorizing temporary rate reductions for pipeline projects that have used the Home SF program. 3, standardizing deadlines with various rate reduction programs in between the inclusionary housing program and other standard timelines. 4, remove the requirement for 2 or more people to occupy middle-income units. 5, remove the on-site, off-site, and fee rates set forth in Planning Code Section 419 for the Urban Mixed-Use District for all projects. 6, simplify the requirements set forth in Divisadero NCT by removing the distinction for projects that were upzoned through the creation of the Divisadero NCT. 7, modify the planning code to maintain the same on-site, off-site, and fee rates for both rental housing and ownership projects beginning November 1st, 2026. 8, modify the planning code to remove the annual increases from the inclusionary affordable housing program, which are set to begin on January 1st, 2028. And finally, 9, correct the proposed citywide fee off-site rate for interim rate projects to 20.4% instead of 20.5%, and adjust the low-income tier to 11.4% instead of 11.5%. That's a lot. The committee duplicated the file at Supervisor Safai's request in order to include some of the amendments. However, Supervisor Peskin said that he was not inclined to include any of those amendments to the duplicated ordinance. So the committee ultimately did not take any of the Planning Commission's recommendations. This does not have implementation impacts for the department, as many of the amendments were common sense changes intended to simplify our existing process, which is extremely complicated. The committee members had a robust discussion about these 2 ordinances. Supervisor Peskin explained the history of the inclusionary ordinance, the reasoning behind the reduction, and the process that led to the proposed reductions. Supervisor Peskin was unconvinced that the fees and inclusionary numbers should be reduced and challenged the assumption that these changes would lead to any new housing at all. He asked staff if anyone had projected how much money we're set to lose should this pass. We did not. There was also significant public comment, with most callers objecting to the reduction of fees and questioning the need for additional market rate housing in San Francisco. The committee did end up moving the item to the full board on a 2-to-1 vote, with Supervisor Preston voting against the motion. And then lastly, the committee considered Supervisor Melgar's Family Housing Opportunity SUD ordinance. This ordinance would remove process requirements for demolition and public notice for building expansion, in addition to providing more density for projects in RH zoning districts that meet specific requirements. Commissioners may recall that this was heard last week and amended by Supervisor Melgar. Peskin also had amendments that he wanted to incorporate, however, they had not been drafted to form yet. This week, those amendments were added and included 1, requiring a CU if demolishing any rent-controlled units. 2, ensuring group housing SUD controls still apply. 3, add amendments to ensure that only 1 unit would be permitted in the rear yard should the project be allowed to have more than 4 units based on lot area. 4, excluding the North Beach SUD and the Telegraph Hill SUD from the proposed Family Housing Opportunity SUD. And 5, some clerical amendments. Public comment wasn't as robust as last time, but there were commenters in support and opposition to the ordinance. After public comment, the committee voted to forward the full item to the full board as a committee report, and this ends Aaron Starr's report. Thank you.
Thank you. HPC, the Historic Preservation Commission, did not meet this week. I do have a report from the zoning administrator for the Board of Appeals. The Board of Appeals met last night and considered several appeals of interest to the Planning Commission as an appeal of the zoning administrator's interpretation related to the method of measurement for bulk controls and associated definition of plan dimensions. The interpretation stated that unless specified elsewhere in the planning code, the maximum plan dimensions per specific bulk limits apply within the exterior walls of each individual building or structure, such that a single building may not have multiple vertical elements, such as separate towers, that collectively exceed the maximum permitted plan dimensions. However, separate buildings on the same lot will have separate plan dimensions for the purpose of measuring bulk limits. That interpretation was appealed by 2700 Sloat Holding LLC on the basis that the interpretation was incorrect, inconsistent with past practice, and in violation of state law. After substantial questioning and noting the code provisions, options, and projects to obtain approvals from the Planning Commission for additional bulk, the board determined that the zoning administration had not erred or abused their discretion in issuing the interpretation, and they voted unanimously to deny the appeal. And with that, that concludes your review of past events at the Board of Supervisors, Board of Appeals, and Historic Preservation Commission. If there are no further discussions of department matters, we can move on to general public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the commission on items of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission, except agenda items. With respect to agenda items, your opportunity to address the commission will be afforded when the item is reached in the meeting. Each member of the public may address the commission for up to 3 minutes. When the number of speakers exceeds the 15-minute limit, general public comment may be moved to the end of the agenda. Members of the public, if you wish to provide general public comment and you are here in City Hall, please come forward. Those calling in remotely, press *3, and via WebEx, use the raised hand icon. We will take speakers at City Hall first.
Hi, Georgia Shudish. I sent you an email, but I want to make a correction. If I could have the overhead really quickly. That's okay, I'll figure it out. Well, oh, thank you. Okay. Anyway, I sent you the email, and I'll just show it here. I made a typo. The house on the left is not 345 Liberty, it's 365 Liberty. But I'm talking about 367 Liberty, and what Ms. Lynch is kindly handing out now are the demo calcs that I promised I'd send to you. So these are the demo calcs. There were 2 sets. There was an enforcement, which I'll talk about in September when you have your enforcement thing. But the calcs were changed, and they are fairly close to the thresholds. And so now it's for sale again. It's sold originally in 2019 for $8.7 million. The original, before the work was approved, there was no hearing, was $2.2 million back in 2013. So now it's for sale again because somebody messed up. And I have to tell you, I went in to see it, and it's like a crime scene. It really is. Now, can we blame the demo calcs for that? I blame the demo calcs for that because I think it was a poorly done alteration that took advantage of the demo calcs. So that's why I keep harping on the idea that the demo calcs are an ongoing thing. The thresholds need to be lowered. No matter what you do, 317, it seems like for now at least, is still going to be around. It's been since 2009. They have not been adjusted. When you look at these calcs for this particular project and you look at the pictures I sent in the email, it seems to me that if this isn't a demolition, I don't know what is a demolition. And all of the things that I've shown for the last 9 years, Noe Valley, epicenter of de facto demolition, at some point I run out of words. But please look at the email if you haven't. Please look at the demo calcs, and you can see how close they are, the original ones and then the revised ones, although when the enforcement was done, the staff could not, as I recall, could not confirm that it was a demolition, but certainly given what's happened. Oh, and now it's the shell, whatever's left of it, I don't know what it's sold for, but they were asking $4.5 million for a tear down. Anyway, please adjust the calcs, or at least discuss adjusting the calcs. That would be fabulous. Thank you very much.
Last call for public comment. Seeing no additional speakers requesting to speak under general public comment, general public comment is now closed. And commissioners, we will now move on to your regular calendar. For item number 13, record number 2021-005878, CWP, Expanding Housing Choice, Housing Element Zoning Program. This is an informational presentation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Lisa Chen with Department Staff. Today's informational presentation will provide an update on our housing element zoning program called Expanding Housing Choice. Today, we'll be reviewing some zoning concept maps that present our strategy for adding new housing to meet state requirements. We'll also be discussing various policy considerations and other related efforts, and close by highlighting recent community engagement events and future opportunities for people to get involved. As you'll recall, expanding housing choice is one of the 4 key areas that the department is working on this year to implement the housing element and the mayor's Housing for All executive directive. We had a hearing on these activities on April 27th, and city agencies and policymakers are actively working on implementation of these areas, as you have seen through various hearings. For the rezoning program specifically, the mayor's executive directive commits the department to developing a final proposal by January 2024 to ensure that we are on track to meet state requirements. We have a large team of dedicated and knowledgeable staff working from across the department. Several of them are here today to meet this target. And before we dive into the zoning scenarios themselves.
Ms. Chen, I need to interrupt you.
Sure.
We have a request from Commissioner Ruiz to make a recusal. Apologies to break your stride.
Oh, sure.
I'm so sorry. I misunderstood the city attorney's advice. But as you all know, I've had to recuse myself from the housing element items because of my work with the housing element before I became a planning commissioner. And because this is a housing element item, I must recuse myself from this as well.
Thank you. Ms. Lynch, do we need to vote on this recusal?
I think we should, let's just do a vote for that.
We're not sure. We'll just dot all of our I's twice. Is there a motion to recuse Commissioner Ruiz? Commissioner Braun?
Move to recuse Commissioner Ruiz from this item.
I'll second.
Thank you, commissioners. On that motion to recuse Commissioner Ruiz, Commissioner Braun,
Aye.
Commissioner Diamond,
Aye.
Commissioner Imperial,
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel,
Aye.
and Commission President Tanner.
Reluctantly, aye.
Thank you, commissioners. And Commissioner Ruiz, you can hang out in the back.
All right. Okay, diving back in. Before we actually present the zoning scenarios themselves, we like to just remember who we're really working to expand housing choices for. So if you recall at our last hearing, we shared stories and quotes from all sorts of San Francisco residents. Seniors, families, people with disabilities, young adults, workers, and so on, that illustrate how widespread our housing needs are across the city. So through our engagement on this effort, we are continuing to gather more of those stories that we'll be able to share later on in our process. In accordance with state requirements and our adopted housing element, our rezoning program is focused on expanding the types and amount of housing available in the state-designated housing opportunity areas, which were also called well-resourced neighborhoods in the housing element. To meet RHNA requirements, we need to plan for a minimum of 36,200 units in these areas. We're planning to accomplish this by changing zoning to allow more housing along transit routes, commercial streets, and other key sites shown in orange. Most of this growth will be mid-rise in the range of 65 to 85 feet tall, which is roughly 6 to 8 stories, but with some lower and higher heights in selected locations. Everywhere else, sites can already add 4plexes and 6plexes under current legislation. Since our hearing in April, the department has released 2 zoning concept maps that are variations on the scenarios we submitted with the housing element. These 2 concept maps are meant to show different configurations of height and density that meet state requirements. And we'll note that even though we're showing 2 options, we're not simply asking people to choose one or the other, as there are, of course, many iterations that can get us to our target. The 2 maps are meant to show different trade-offs and elicit feedback that we will incorporate into a revised scenario this fall. Zoning Concept 1 is shown here with the proposed height changes in orange and red. It spreads new housing more widely across the neighborhoods, and thus heights are slightly lower than in Zoning Concept 2. There is a buffer or a band surrounding the major streets shown in dark blue, and in these areas, density limits would be lifted, but height limits would remain the same. Zoning Concept 2 is focused on the same major streets and sites, but has slightly higher heights. For example, some corridors that were 65 feet in the other map are 85 feet here. Because growth is concentrated on these streets, there is no surrounding buffer. I should also note that we consider these to be the idealized final heights, taking into consideration the state density bonus and other programs. So in other words, we will design our zoning to consider these programs such that buildings would not exceed these heights. To make the maps feel a little more tangible, we've been showing people examples of buildings in San Francisco that match the proposed heights, including non-conforming buildings in the rezoned areas that people may not even realize exceed current heights. Here are some examples of mid-rise buildings specifically showing both new and older architecture. The ultimate goal is to address our affordable housing needs both by creating more opportunity sites and funding to develop subsidized affordable housing, but also by adding a greater diversity of housing types overall, such as apartment buildings, townhomes, fourplexes, and other smaller multi-unit buildings that are shown to be more affordable than single-family homes. This will also help address a common theme that we've heard from residents, which is that they face challenges finding the types of homes that meet their needs when their life circumstances change. Here are some of the other policy considerations we're focused on. Even though we aren't creating area plans or neighborhood plans through this process, we are still thinking holistically about how new housing can enhance these neighborhoods. In addition to expanding housing affordability and diversity, we're thinking about the housing approval process, how new housing can enhance neighborhoods by bringing new infrastructure and resources and contribute to cultural heritage and urban design. Relatedly, staff are working on several technical analyses to inform this work. First, we are reviewing our analysis of zone capacity, which is essentially our reasonable estimate of the amount of housing that could be built under the proposed zoning. We're reviewing both our soft site methodology as well as exploring other tools like the probability model used for the housing element. We're also launching our financial feasibility analysis to understand how the proposed zoning changes can encourage housing development. We're working with the economic consultant Century Urban, who you remember has worked with the city on both inclusionary housing tech studies, and we're hoping to have the initial results of that for our next round of outreach this fall. We're also developing objective design standards, and we have Trent Greenan from our staff who's working on that effort, which will include visualizations of how the new buildings may fit in with the local context. So we'll be gathering feedback from architects and other stakeholders in the coming months, so there will be more opportunities to weigh in on that. And finally, we're starting to develop the parameters of how the zoning program could be structured and implemented. So as noted in the case report, we are exploring creating a local bonus program and are working to identify ways that such a program could be an attractive alternative to the state density bonus. As you know, policymakers have been working on numerous legislative proposals that have been before the commission and that may intersect with this rezoning, focused on removing process constraints, increasing housing density, and modifying our inclusionary housing and impact fee requirements. Our final zoning proposal will incorporate these amendments as applicable. Shifting gears, we wanted to give a recap of our recent outreach and future opportunities for people to get involved. Here's our timeline from now through early 2024, showing 2 phases of engagement this summer and fall before the adoption process starts next winter. To date, we've had a diverse range of events. Our recent open houses have been the most widely attended, with about 200 community members over the 2 events. Our team also conducted a series of field visits earlier in the year, walking along the corridors and meeting with supervisors' offices and nonprofits. We've also had about a dozen community conversations, which are essentially one-on-one presentations with community groups. And finally, we've been excited to partner with MoCD and Self-Help for the Elderly on a series of community education workshops meant to provide capacity building and information about housing and zoning for residents in D1 and D4. That process will ultimately include 40 workshops, of which about half have been completed. Here are some images from the recent open houses on June 22nd at the LGBT Center and July 11th at Golden Gate Park. We wanted to make sure these events were accessible to the broader community, so we provided childcare and food. We translated our materials and had live interpreters on site, and we worked with CBO partners and supervisors' offices to publicize the events. The presentation and all of the content from the open houses are posted on our website, including a community input form for people to provide additional feedback. Here are some themes pulled from the input we've received so far. So overall, there was a strong recognition of our affordable housing needs and a desire to see more housing that serves our most vulnerable residents. Not surprisingly, there was also mixed receptivity for greater heights and density, with some attendees wanting to see us add more housing, including in different areas and at higher heights. Other attendees expressing concern about changing the predominantly low-density development pattern, and a range of comments in between. There were also comments reinforcing our need to improve our housing approval process, and comments about infrastructure and service needs as we continue to add housing. And finally, we heard about the existing community and cultural assets in these neighborhoods that people love and want to see enhanced. We are continuing to solicit feedback throughout Phase 1. So I already mentioned the open house input form on our website. In addition to that, we're creating a slimmed-down survey that will be released in the next few weeks to get even more targeted feedback. We're also continuing to get requests for community conversations from neighborhood groups, and we encourage people to get in touch with us if you would like to schedule a meeting. Soon, we'll be launching into focus groups that are targeting equity populations like renters, youth, seniors, and others. And finally, we're coordinating with supervisors' offices on outreach opportunities and building out our communication strategy more broadly to let as many people know about this work as we can. Our next steps will be to continue to collect and analyze this feedback, which will inform our draft zoning scenario to be released in Phase 2 this fall. And we'll have other community engagement opportunities during that phase, including additional open houses. So in closing, we just want to thank everyone who's participated so far. We've already heard a lot of rich and substantive feedback, and we're looking forward to having more conversations. So this concludes our presentation, and we're available for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will open public comment on this item. Members of the public here in City Hall, please come forward and line up on the screen side of the room to your right. Those calling in remotely, please press *3, and those joining via WebEx, please use the raise hand icon. We will start with City Hall first. You will have 3 minutes.
Oh, thanks for 3 minutes. Here's a copy for the record and for Mr. Switsky. Georgia Shudish. Since Sacramento doesn't require the rezoning to be completed until January 2026, it's baffling to me that the mayor would instruct her department and the Board of Supervisors to finalize this major overhaul by January 2024, which is 2 years ahead of time required by the state. January 2024 is roughly 6 months away. When will the financial feasibility study from Century Urban on the rezoning, as cited on pages 4 and 5 of today's memo to the Planning Commission, be published? In the fall, we'll see. That would be nice. This feasibility study seems vital for the public and policymakers to read and digest. The May 6, 2022 financial feasibility study, also from Century Urban, on densification under the fourplex scenario, states that the most financially feasible way for homeowners to densify would be to add a unit to the existing single-family home. This scenario would not require a rezoning thanks to SB 9 or Supervisor Melgar's proposed ordinance. Would a rapid rezoning on a faster timetable than required from Sacramento just create a speculative frenzy because developers would have the means to get ready for the market on the upswing? I am still very concerned about the warning in the October 2021 staff analysis in SB 9 that low-income homeowners might feel pressure to cash out. This seems even more likely under a large rezoning, particularly a rezoning on a fast track. The fact that some objectives in the 2014 housing element were not enacted, most specifically policy 3.4 to preserve, quote, naturally affordable, close quote, housing types, mirrors the issues around speculative fever of the past decade. Given the tremendous gap in affordable housing, it is unfortunate that the Section 317 demo calcs were never adjusted since March 26, 2009. If adjusted, the calcs could have been the tool to enact the policy to preserve more naturally affordable or financially accessible housing. The findings for some of the recent legislation cites the tripling in the median sales price from 2011 to 2021, from $439,000 to $1.58 million, including the 9% increase from 2019 to 2020. this exactly, precisely, mirrors the increases in what the staff has determined is the epicenter of de facto demolition, and that, of course, is Noe Valley. Please do not rush the rezoning of San Francisco. Take advantage of Sacramento's generosity, and please adjust the demo calcs. And please codify the residential flat policy to preserve flats in their existing configuration to preserve existing sound housing. Thank you very much.
We will now move on to our remote callers.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jake Price on behalf of the Housing Action Coalition. Want to really commend Lisa Chen and the Planning Department for their work thus far. I was at the open house earlier this month in Golden Gate Park and found it very informative and insightful. Very excited about this proposal, but I do want to offer one piece of feedback that I don't think we should be limiting the rezoning efforts to just transit corridors. Neighborhoods need to grow as well, and focusing it all on transit corridors, doesn't provide a diversification of housing options throughout the city, which we would love to see. Looking forward to more work and more outreach being done, and thank you everyone for your work thus far.
Hi, Adam Van Proyen. This all seems really great. This is my first time coming to one of these things, so I don't know exactly how this works, but I was curious if this does anything to address mixed zoning throughout the city. I think a lot of the places in Sunset and in Richmond are devoid of, nearby walkable grocery stores, restaurants, cafes, and all that kind of stuff. And if we're rezoning things to allow for higher buildings, I think we should encourage and incentivize mixed-use zoning for this. I don't know if that's something you guys decide here or somewhere else, but I'm curious about that.
Last call for public comment. Please press *3, use the raise hand icon, come forward. Seeing no additional requests to speak, public comment is closed, and this informational item is now before you.
Great. Thank you, staff. Thank you to the callers. I know this represents, a brief report, but lots of hours of work amongst a very diverse design team. Hopefully, we can give you some feedback, and also I'd love to hear where my fellow commissioners are, what's on your mind, what are your most important things, or maybe what you're hearing from parts of the community that are important about the housing element. So I wanted to dig into a few things. They're not necessarily in any order. I wanted to hear a little bit more perhaps about the open house events as well as some of the online forums. First, just a technical question. The feedback form, that's online now, is that for folks who did attend the open house, or is it something that even if someone didn't attend, they could participate in responding to that?
Sure. It is available to anyone. Okay. So, we did have people who came to the events and we're just kind of blown away with how much content there was. And so we wanted people to have a chance to provide additional feedback if, things came to them after the event. And then we also wanted an alternative for people who couldn't make it to the event so that they can have almost the same experience and see all the boards and the same questions. But like I mentioned, we're also creating an additional survey that's going to be kind of a more traditional, slimmed down version of that.
Okay. And is it something that will it be open until a certain time? I'm just thinking about, us as commissioners letting folks know that they can respond to that. When is the deadline for folks to use that feedback form, if you have one?
Yeah. So we haven't set an exact date, but we're kind of roughly aiming for the end of September to continue collecting feedback. Mm-hmm. And then into the fall, we're going to move into phase 2 and have a revised scenario. Okay. So of course it's a bit fluid because we'll be accepting feedback throughout.
Of course. That's great. And maybe just give us a little bit more sense of the open house. I know you noted that there were areas of, unsurprising, kind of like some folks saying we need more height in more places, and some folks saying, well, I'm not too sure about the height. As you looked at the differences between the two scenarios, were there like themes or preferences that came up or even rationale of like why folks would or wouldn't prefer one of the rezoning scenarios? Just give us a little maybe more insight. I know it's not maybe specific, but just what you can recall or what you've been able to gather.
Yeah, so I would say there was a lot of nuanced feedback, it was very helpful to be able to meet with people and talk to them versus just, having people vote on one or two. I think we saw people really grappling with some of the trade-offs, which, some of the commenters also just commented on. Having kind of that buffer of decontrolled areas brings some advantages in terms of, just distributing the growth more broadly, maybe creating a transition from the corridors down into the neighborhoods. But then there are other trade-offs because, those are smaller projects, maybe they're not paying into our inclusionary program and so on. So it wasn't necessarily that there were clear leanings toward one or the other, but people were kind of raising different trade-offs and different preferences according to their what their opinions were.
And then trying to figure out, maybe they couldn't settle it even for themselves, but they kind of see that there is a pro and con to either scenario and kind of trying to figure out, what the right mix is. Mm-hmm. Did you see any geographic difference, like in certain areas or certain corridors? Folks said, I like scenario 1 in this particular area, but in this part of the map, I like scenario 2. Did anything like that come up?
We haven't been able to isolate those sorts of trends yet, which is, I think, what we're hoping to build out through the rest of our outreach. As I mentioned, for example, we're partnering with some of the supervisors who want to do kind of district-level outreach, which I think will be helpful. So right now, it's kind of more just overall feedback. We are hoping that people will give us that very specific geographic feedback about specific streets or areas, because that's ultimately what really helps us create the next scenario.
Yeah, because I could see certainly there's different capacity streets, different scale of various things throughout, and so some may be more amenable to scenario 2 or 1, just depending on that. And then you also mentioned that you're doing some district walks, which I think is a fabulous idea. Maybe just share what you do on those walks, or kind of what happens when folks are joining you for those.
Yeah, so they've been a bit informal because, they're not like a public event. It's really a way for our team to also build our own capacity and meet with, nonprofits and others who are working on the ground and hearing from them about, different needs that they are seeing in their neighborhoods. So they've really varied from walk to walk. Some of them I think our first one was in the Sunset, where we met with 5 CBOs in a day, so we were kind of exhausted by the end of it. But some of them have been a little bit more loose in terms of the agenda. We have been meeting with supervisors' offices on some of the walks as well. And it's kind of a way for us to see, the urban realm, see the history, and then also meet some of the people.
Great, wonderful. Maybe shifting gears to some of the more policy questions. We've talked obviously a lot, and I in particular, about creating a local bonus program. So I know that you have a few paragraphs in the staff report about it, and in particular reminding us that we as a body and the Board of Supervisors and Mayor said we want to create a ministerial path for housing approval, and in fact that we need to, and in fact for our sites that were repeating from previous cycles, we are under state regulation to do so. And so curious what the discussions have been around the potential paths for that. I know that there's been some concern of does our charter even allow it? Our charter allows it when the state tells us to, but other than that, do we need a more complex legal mechanism to make that local path ministerial?
Yeah. So I would say those conversations are still in a very early stage because we are working with the city attorney's office and trying to explore what the pathways are. But as you know, it's not only the sites that have been reused, low-income sites. It's also the sites that we are rezoning that we're going to designate as low-income sites to meet our RENA. And so, we have also been just mapping the universe of sites so we can get a sense of how widespread they are.
Okay, and do those have to be within the well-resourced neighborhoods, or some of those sites could be distributed across the city, correct?
Yes, some of them are outside of the well-resourced areas as well. But in the adopted housing element, there was an effort to not include the priority equity geographies for the reused sites.
Great, awesome. And then one of the things that I know comes up here, and also it obviously came up in the outreach we're doing, is thinking about how do we co-locate or plan for more community facilities. Just curious how that work's going. In particular, just are we thinking of a range of strategies, like trying to have facilities that are part of development projects, or is it more looking at current public sites, like an existing library, and creating more capacity by adding floors or something on existing public facilities? How do we think, or even fire stations, things that may actually need new land and need to have more of them? Any thoughts on how we're trying to think about not just the units, but all the resources that are public that go along with the neighborhoods.
Yeah, so this is obviously a much longer-term discussion than we can solve in the 6 months we have remaining. But I think we are building on some of the analysis that went into the EIR, where we were identifying, the specific facilities and which ones have additional capacity, which ones maybe will be stretched with the addition of new housing. So we have been, communicating with other agencies about the changes that we're proposing, and so that it's on their radar as part of their just capital planning processes.
Yeah.
I will also say that, part of these being well-resourced neighborhoods or housing opportunity areas is that they, in many cases, there are, good infrastructure in place to support growth. So it really depends on the specific topic.
Yeah, and probably similar to the specific neighborhood, even as we get from just like the entire geography to what are in certain areas, and then of course layering on that how many units might be there and what kind of additional facilities may or may not be needed. I think that is all my questions. I think the only comment I will make is I'm eager to see how things continue. I do think this is timely. I know there's a concern, Ms. Shudas, that you raised around kind of why are we doing it so quickly, but I think we've been in a housing crisis for decades, so no time like the present to move forward and implement the thing that we said we want to do. So that's my thoughts on that, and I hope that I'm very impressed with the work they all have done, and I know it'll still be quite a lot more work to do to get us to a proposed rezoning plan. With that, I'm going to call on Commissioner Diamond.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking staff for all of their work. It's tremendous in moving this forward, and particularly want to compliment you and encourage you to keep doing the neighborhood meetings so that we can actually get the input from the people whose neighborhoods are going to be most affected by this. I think that's an absolutely critical piece of this, together with input from the supervisors on these two district concept maps, zoning concept maps on sort of a very, very localized level, because the supervisors are the ones who know best the needs of their districts, and I believe that's an absolutely critical step. With that, although this is just informational, I wanted to point out 3 concerns that I had based upon what I've seen so far, so that those can be looked at in more detail as you go forward. The first is, and you made reference to it, in zoning concept 1, there's this darker blue area that has no height change but removes the density limits. So my initial question is, if you remove the density limits, do those areas then become potentially subject to the state density bonus law?
Yes, so as we mentioned, we're trying to factor that in. So in creating our local program, we'll make a determination of, are we changing the baseline zoning, or do you have to opt out of the state program in order to utilize whatever zoning changes we're proposing? And that could be, all the zoning changes at once, or it could be a scale like we have in Home SF. So we're still designing all of that. But the idea is that we're hoping that those maps that you see there, those are the idealized final heights.
Okay, so I am very concerned about this issue, which is we are saying here that we're not changing the heights. And if we move forward with zoning concept 1, I need sort of complete reassurance that we don't end up with state density bonus projects that can then go from 40 feet, or 45 feet, which is what the height is in most of these areas, to 65 feet, because that then just undermines what we're telling people, which is that these represent the end heights. Separate and apart from that, I have a concern about increasing the density in those areas beyond the increases that we've just reviewed as a commission and at the board, which is changing the density to 4 units and then 6 units on the corners. Those were, I thought, at the end, highly negotiated but well thought out ordinances, and I don't understand why we would want to increase the density above that, especially if we have another alternative that gets us to the same end result in terms of the number of units that we need under our RHNA goal. I believe that, as I've said consistently throughout here, I'm very much in favor of increasing the height on the commercial streets and not on the residential side streets. And the density increases on the residential side streets, I think, are great in terms of the ordinances we've already considered, which is moving it to 4 units or 6 units at the end. But beyond that, I have concern about how it will actually transform each neighborhood. Even though we say if we don't require parking, people won't have cars, these are family neighborhoods, and people with children generally have at least one car. And I don't understand where all these additional cars are going to park if we are jamming up the density. And while we theoretically would like people not to have cars, I don't believe the transit on the west side is anywhere close to the place where it is, where we can assume that people will not have cars if we're increasing the density. So I would really like to see a lot of discussion around that issue in your neighborhood meetings, so we really get a sense from the people who are out there what they think about taking the density with or without the height increases above 4 and 6, which is what we've just adopted. So that's one issue. The second issue has to do with an issue I raised last week in conjunction with the cultural districts, and that's Clement Street. This issue may come up in other areas as well too, but Clement Street's not that far from my house, so I'm much more familiar with this neighborhood than I am with the others. And Clement Street is an incredibly unique neighborhood. I walked down it again this morning just to remind myself how it really functions. There's virtually zero formula retail on this street, with the exception of banks. It is filled with grocery stores and beauty salons and restaurants, many of which are owned and operated by members of our Asian community, caters in many respects in terms of who's at the stores when you look at them, to the neighborhood residents, which is important, many of whom are Asian. And I am deeply worried that if we increase the density on this street, in both scenarios you have it go up to 65 feet, that the only way to really do that, given the small scale of those shops at the moment, is to tear the stores down and build 65-foot new buildings. And even if we put retail in at the bottom, which of course I assume we would, that the rents may be significantly higher than they are now, and the current composition of shops won't be able to coexist. And I think it is really, really important that we understand the features of our commercial strips that are attractive to the residents in that area, to make sure that in our tear to add more housing, which is absolutely critical, that we're not destroying the way neighborhoods function. In this case, it's particularly significant to me when I look at this, especially from Arguello to 12th Avenue. That's where there's the highest concentration of these shops. I mean, it goes all the way out, but it's particularly from Arguello to 12th that on any given day, you see how this neighborhood operates, that's just different than Fillmore or Chestnut or Union. And when I look at Clement, it's 2 blocks away from Geary, where I don't think anybody has any objection to that going up to 85 feet or even higher, and 2 blocks away from California, which I see you're calling for 65 or 85-foot height limits. And I have no concern. I'm deeply, very much in favor of those. But Clement Street is completely different because of the way it currently functions. So I think it's absolutely critical that you be in close conversation with Supervisor Chan in particular. And as I say, there may be other neighborhood commercial streets that function, in ways that are unique and important and vital to how our neighborhoods function. So I want to make sure we're not skipping that step as we, paint with orange and paint with blue, on a map, that we're taking into account the on-the-ground realities. And then the third thing is I want to reemphasize Commissioner Tanner's point about the infrastructure. That I recognize that capital planning projects can be much further in the distance, but if we rezone, we could end up with a lot of housing where there aren't neighborhood parks. And the schools, may or may not, be sufficient, and the water lines may not be sufficient, and the EIR and the transportation for sure may not be sufficient. And so I think we need to make sure that we're not letting ourselves get ahead on housing, that these need to move. I'm not saying one needs to be contingent on the other, but our all-out effort to increase housing on the west side, I believe needs to be matched by an all-out effort to make sure that the infrastructure that's necessary for those units to work as neighborhoods, that the infrastructure doesn't lag behind. So those are my thoughts and comments so
Great.
far.
Thank you. I was going to pick up on a couple before I go to Commissioner Braun, which is I think that it would be interesting to think about with OEWD like a retail displacement policy or program, whether it's for Clement Street or other areas, because I do think when we think about displacement and gentrification, we have some hope and confidence that because of some of the home ownership rates in some areas that we can limit that, and layering on our tenant protection and other policies we have to hopefully preserve tenants in place, that we're trying to mitigate residential displacement. But I think part of gentrification that is maybe not as a focus on our department is around retail and other services or other uses, worship places, other things that can be really important to a community as it exists. And so how do we think about what could that look like? And I don't know. That's not my area of expertise, and maybe not ours. But did you want to address that at all, Ms. Chen?
Yes, I will just say that we have been in contact with OEWD and particularly the Office of Small Business. And so, and that's actually kind of a community that we really want to deepen our outreach in throughout the next phases of outreach, just making sure that small businesses have a voice in the process as well.
I'd be curious to know if they feel like owning their building is something they want, or they like leasing. Like what kind of tools give them more stability? Is it having longer leases? Like some of it may be strategy business by business, but I'd be curious to know like what they feel would help them have more place-based stability for their enterprise.
Yeah, and those are all great questions. And we did, at our open house, we had a station that was specifically devoted to the ground floor of these buildings that are coming in, and what are the uses that people love currently and want to see preserved and enhanced in kind of the next generation of buildings that are on these corridors. So definitely there's a lot more conversations to have there.
And maybe it's something, if we are doing a kind of as a bonus program, maybe there's something we can do to leverage, say, part of what you're doing on your ground floor as part of your bonus, like getting the bonus. I don't know. There's something that could be there. And then I wanted to pick up on your concern around state density bonus. I think a question I have, Ms. Chen, is for the state density bonus, if we do density decontrol, my understanding is it's hard to predict the height that would result from a state density bonus project, because it's really, they get a bonus of square footage, which could be any number of floors depending on the dimensions of the site or how they choose to distribute the additional square footage over the site. So it would seem challenging to get to a definitive height because there's so much variation over each parcel in the density decontrolled areas, and assuming the density decontrol goes along with the rezoning.
Right. So I may not have explained this completely clearly, but one of the levers we have is really just keeping the zoning as it is today as the baseline, and then having people opt into whatever our local program is in lieu of the state program.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So and that may change also because we have current legislation that's pending that may also change the density limits in some areas. So it is kind of an evolving baseline, but that is our goal, which is to basically craft it so that what our program is competitive and an alternative to the state program.
I see. Great. Thank you very much for clarifying that. And I'll call on Commissioner Braun.
First of all, I just want to echo the thanks to all the work that department staff has been putting into this effort and the outreach effort in particular. It's a very high touch, high time kind of thing to do, but it's really important, so I do appreciate that. I'm going to start by getting in the weeds a little bit on a sort of pivoting off of this question around the state density bonus and how that interacts with things. I have kind of a bigger picture question of, so we have to meet the zoning gap of 36,200 units. And if we are relying on density bonuses as, we're trying to take into account the effects of state and local density bonuses on height limits and how many units can be produced, I mean, does that, I just want to make sure and kind of get reassured that that counts towards filling our gap. Is that right, Lisa Chen?
Yes, great question. It's something we're grappling with as well. We have been in touch with, for example, City of Los Angeles. They are also considering their rezoning as a mix of a bonus program, and they actually said that they were inspired by our HomeSF program in creating this idea, as well as some targeted changes to specific corridors. We will, through the course of this effort, be in touch with the state to make sure that whatever we create will satisfy the requirements. I think we do have a precedent of creating a local program, so that is helpful, but I think it'll also just it'll be contingent upon us to demonstrate with evidence that we think that this is a viable program that people will choose.
I see. Okay, that's reassuring. Especially since, I guess there is some wiggle room to play with here. I mean, if some of those units come out of the assumption that there might be a density bonus program, and I think we're hitting something like up to 56,000 units all in with the comprehensive rezoning that has been shown. So there's still some space in there where we could maybe have our base zoning that does achieve the 36,200 and then density bonus for the above. But either way, yes, very important to just find out what the state's perspective is on the extent to which these units count towards
Commissioner
filling
Braun,
that gap.
I think Mr. Switzky had something he wanted to add.
Yes, yeah.
I just wanted to build off of which one? Hello? Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. I just wanted to build off of what Lisa said, which is that not just what do we need to demonstrate with evidence, but we did actually count the existing state density bonus towards our existing sites inventory, and the state accepted because we could demonstrate with evidence that the city has, there's clearly evidence that projects have been using the state density bonus. So we did factor that into the analysis, the probability analysis that sort of created our baseline from which the gap was created. So we've already have experience doing that with the state, and we're confident that with additional evidence that our new local bonus, and whatever form it takes, will be attractive and viable, that the state would accept it. I think there's already past practice of doing that. So.
Okay. Yeah, and it's good to see the revisions to the soft site methodology and the feasibility study also building more of that evidence. I assume that would be part of that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I had two other things I wanted to raise. I guess, so one is sort of ultimately, a lot of the questions that have been asked have been around making sure that we are customizing things for local conditions. And I know that it was mentioned that people are not being asked us to choose between alternative 1 and alternative 2. It's a way to kind of gauge feelings. And so ultimately is the idea that there might be very much a localized sort of mix and match and variety of outcomes in the rezoning process that's sort of neighborhood specific. Is that where this is all ultimately landing? Or is there still sort of a move towards a bigger picture, broader change to the zoning?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it also kind of picks up on Commissioner Tanner's comment about, are we hearing different things from different neighborhoods? I think the way that we created those maps were to really illustrate some principles, density on corridors, and then the buffer or not having the buffer, and then other key sites. I think our approach is really going to be just to hear what's the breadth of reactions that we're getting, and also people raising, the trade-offs and hearing, people's concerns about, one type of kind of urban design pattern versus another. And I think all of that will inform that next scenario. So, I would say that they were meant to be zoning concepts. They are, kind of illustrative of ideas. And then once we get the feedback, we'll have a clearer idea if there is kind of more of a tailored approach, or if it is a little bit more of kind of consistent upzoning in a certain way across the city.
Okay, and thank you. Yeah, so I'll just add, I'll echo the emphasis on on my interest in that sort of local outreach and seeing how very local conditions might affect what ultimately happens. And then finally, as part of that, in some of the broader outreach, like the 2 workshops that were held, which were more citywide, was data on the locations of the participants collected, at least districts that they live in, or things like that? What kind of location data was collected?
Yeah. So we did, ask people to identify their neighborhood when they were adding their Post-its or filling out their kind of event guides. I don't know if there was 100% adherence to that. So, and then also sometimes comments were more general and sometimes they were more specific. So there was a range there. But I think, having kind of that more local outreach through the supervisor's offices and the one-on-one conversations can kind of fill in some of those gaps. And then we are also making sure that people include that information through the online surveys.
Great. Yes. Yeah. The online survey seems like a great way to kind of cross-tabulate this. So yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, those are my questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Braun. Commissioner Imperial?
Thank you, and also thank you for all of this work. Looks like our commission is also going to give you more work too, in terms of summaries and reports, what we would like to see as well. I also echo what other commissioners have mentioned in terms of it's also important for us, or for me at least, to see the summaries of the trade-offs and also seeing the local conditions. So I hope that in the next report, that will be more specific, outlined in our summaries of report. It's good for me to understand what are actually being trade-offs in different kinds of zonings that we are being proposed, and also the breadth of feedbacks per areas. So that will be a lot of work, I understand, and with the limited time too. I'm also concerned about that, I'm not gonna lie, and in terms of the capacity of the staff, and also how are we really going to gather all this important information in order for us to make a good decision. Another thing that I would like to actually press upon is on the financial feasibility. From the reports, from the inclusionary housing tax report, one thing that again I emphasize are the area median incomes, and this is something that I think has been an ongoing conversation for the last 10 years in our city about the area median income, and whether it's also an appropriate measurement when we're talking about financial feasibility, and including the financial feasibility or the area median incomes in a way that how it affects different kinds of households, the different income level of households. And most of the time, we rely on the financial feasibility, especially if it's new developments, right? So I think it's good to advise the consultant to take that into consideration. And I think, I'm not sure in which area or which body, but I think there has been a lot of conversation, the area median income, whether the SF market value, area median is appropriate, and then there's also the federal poverty guideline also too, that is a lot lower than, but also have the realities of the low-income households here in San Francisco. So I'd like to see that kind of financial feasibility in a way that also affects the different income levels, and how these new developments also will impact in these different income levels. I also, and part of the report as well is to analyze the pending legislations, including the inclusionary housing tax report, and also I also want to highlight in terms of other legislations too that proposing to have to expand the rent-controlled units. I think that would also be important to be part of the financial feasibility, not just the inclusionary housing tax report, but also the impact of the new rent-controlled units. So those what I think would like to see. And also, I think what I like for us in the department to challenge ourselves in terms of the zoning concepts, because what I see in the map is, highlighting the proposed height limits, the proposed density controls, but you hear from the commissioners, from us, that there is more than what we would like to see, not just the heights in bulk, but also the businesses, right? The infrastructures that what would create a thriving neighborhood, schools, access to schools, and and pipelines for transportation. I know that will be a lot of work, again, for the department to think about how to coordinate these different needs, but also incorporate that in the map, because also part of what we've been discussing too is the affordable housing strategy. And I don't see that necessarily here in this map. And so, I will probably see that more in the text, but it's good to see that also in the map as to where are the affordable housing strategies in this map will be located. So that's what I'm looking for in the next report and feedback. So thank you.
Thank you. I just want to pick up on a few things that you said to add to that. I think, as I know, and partly there's so much information and you're displaying it beautifully. So it could be interesting as we get deeper into our deliberations to be able to have maps with additional layers, whether it's we toggle it on and off at home, or that, as it's in the case report, they're toggled on the transit, understanding the transit mapping, where housing opportunity sites are. I know you're doing the mapping right now of where low-income housing sites could be located, and if we can get a sense of kind of where they are. And then also kind of some of the key business areas and corridors, which obviously they're mostly on commercial corridors, but we know there's kind of nodes where there can be a higher concentration or maybe more successful kind of populated area of businesses, not just it's allowed to have a business on the ground floor, but we know this is like a kind of key shopping area or retail area. And that can help us as we're doing more fine grain, detailed rezoning on certain areas. Maybe it is different in different parts of it. And the other thing I want to mention, this would be maybe for Mr. Sucre and Mr. Switsky, as we kind of keep doing the planning, and what I would like to have us have a hearing on would be, one, a hearing here at the Commission around tenant protections. I think I really, really want to understand how our different city agencies are working together, where there are gaps in working together, where there may need to be memoranda of understanding drafted to make sure that we are not leading in a negative way displacement or unintentional gentrification because we are not able to work or have the processes worked out with our sister agencies to effectively help to coordinate. And I would even extend that not only to sister agencies, but to nonprofit partners that are funded by the city to do tenant protection work. How are we making sure that all of those different bodies are coordinating together, let alone adding on the layer that I think we fund nonprofits to help folks when they do need to go to court to have a lawyer. So how is that also factored into this? And I don't want to be here saying, well, it's not our job, it's the rent board. Like, that's just not satisfactory to me, because whether it's the rent board or the planning department or building department, I don't care, it's the city. It's the public that is being served by the city. So I would love to have us having hearing to really understand what that's about. And similarly, I want to thank Mr. Greenan for working on our design standards. I'd love to have those have a separate moment so we can talk about those in an informational context before we're asked to finalize. I think that is going to go a long way towards not just what's the height, what's the bulk, what's the this, what's the that, how's it going to look, right? How's it going to feel? What is it going to look like? And how are we going to transition for some of these neighborhoods from the design standard that they may be used to right now, the guidelines, to something that is like, it's either this or it's that. And, we're moving into ministerial approvals, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd love to have those be two items that do come back to us for robust discussion by this commission before we're, asked to vote on and approve any rezoning plans. Any comments or questions, staff or commissioners?
Commission President Tanner, we did have one additional request to speak remote. Would you like to take that at this time?
Sure, we can take that.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. This is Gene Natoli with San Francisco YIMBY. I was giving you a call. I want to thank you for taking the time to dig into this. There's a lot of good questions. I want you to keep pushing on this because we know we have a lot to do. One of my concerns when I've been digging into this is we're relying a lot on other projections, such as we really need to nail down the fact that we need to create a lot more capacity, because a lot of that's not going to happen. And so I want you to continue to be creative and continue to think about that as you're expanding this. It's been good to hear your questions and see what you have to say about this as we continue to explore this. I know this is an ongoing process and there will be more opportunities to provide feedback and see how this develops. But I really want to encourage you. Obviously, transit corridors are important, but the idea that a block off of a transit corridor we can't do a little bit more is a little odd to me. And I think we really need to expand our concept at times and not just put all of our housing in one place. This is something we need to do as a city. And so it's going to take everywhere pitching in just about every way possible. We've tried for too long to push most of our housing to too few places with really negative results for a lot of people, unfortunately. So let's continue to expand the way we're thinking about this and the way we're approaching this. Thank you for your time today.
Mr. Sucre? Or sorry, that's you, Josh.
Sorry, I slid over into a different microphone. I just wanted to build off of President Tanner. You made a comment about in terms of tenant protections, making sure that we're not saying that's not our job, but just extending that theme back to also the topic of infrastructure and other services as well. I mean, the planning department, we're not just the housing zoning agency. I mean, we're a comprehensive planning agency, and we take that charge very, very seriously. And we didn't just leave the EIR as the last word on what we need to do in terms of planning for infrastructure. And we're very actively engaged with all the agencies that cover these topics, the SFPUC, the SFMTA, the school district, which is not even a city agency, but we're very closely engaged with them, the Rec Park. And we had agency partners at the workshops. We had MTA staff at the workshops. We reviewed language with the SFPUC, and we're working with them daily in parallel with this to make sure they're planning for this growth that we're planning for as well. So I just want you to rest assured that there's a lot going on that we're not necessarily covering or highlighting here, but it's definitely part of our work and part of the conversation.
Great, thank you very much. And maybe one thing just to add on Commissioner Imperial's comment on AMIs, it may be interesting as you are working towards creating our local bonus program. One of the things that is impressive about the state density bonus is the lower levels of AMI that it pushes for. And so that may be a way to get at some of the neighborhood level AMI levels, is just by having our bonus program reach a little bit deeper than even our current inclusionary does, so that we have kind of, if you look at all of our programs and including state density bonus, we're kind of hopefully meeting every income group at some point, and that could be more helpful for some of our income groups that are left out of the top. The higher tier, it can be still pretty high income, even if it's like 100% AMI or 80%, it can be pretty high income. With that, I don't see any other commissioner comments or questions. So thank you again, staff. We really, really appreciate this great work.
Very good. We can now move on to item number 14 for record number 2015-012490. ENX-02 at 88 Bluxom. This is a request to modify the approved large project authorization.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kalyani Agnihotri, Department Staff. The item before you is a request to modify a previously approved large project authorization, which was to demolish the Bay Club San Francisco tennis building and construct a new mixed-use building at 88 Bluxom Street, which was formerly known as 645 5th Street. In 2019, the previously approved project proposed to retain the Bay Club tennis facility by constructing new tennis courts, fitness center, cafe, and administrative offices. Now, the revised project proposes to remove the 127,000 square foot private tennis club that was to be located below grade from the scope of work, thus requiring an updated large project authorization. The project has a total of 1,097,000 gross square feet of area and will include 775,000 gross square feet of office, 31,000 square feet of community recreation space, 9,000 square feet of PDR uses, 19,000 square feet of retail, 4,500 square feet of childcare facilities, off-street parking spaces, loading, and bicycle spaces. The project site is identified as a key site in the Central SOMA plan and will provide qualified amenities, including 106,000 square foot air parcel dedication to MoCD for future development, 31,000 square foot recreation and community center known as the Gene Friend Aquatic Annex, and a development of a new park known as the Bluxom Linear Park. The project site is currently vacant. Permits were issued in post the 2019 approval to demolish the former tennis club buildings at the project site. The proposed project will consist of 3 building components: the east, the west, and the community center, or the affordable housing component. And these will be built on a podium over multi-level basements. The east and the west components have shared lobbies and floor plates, and they've been designed with them having differing fenestration patterns and building materials. The overall bulk of the project is minimized with staggering heights and massing designed to maximize views, light, and air access. The 2019 project received the following exceptions from the planning code, which are the same for the revised project as follows: building setbacks and street wall articulation, off-street freight loading requirements, PDR space requirements, wind, height limits, bulk controls, horizontal mass reduction, and narrow and mid-block alley controls. As of date of the publication, staff has not received any comments in support or opposition of the project. In summary, the department finds that the project is consistent with the objectives and policies of the general plan. Although the revised project eliminates the tennis courts, this change does not affect the overall bulk, massing, or design of the project. In fact, it results in a reduction in the depth of the excavation that's proposed by approximately 23 feet below grade. The project provides new mixed-use development, a public recreation center, and significant site updates, which will enhance the neighborhood amenities and opportunities for employment. The dedication of the air parcel to MoCD for future development will also further the city's objectives in increasing the supply of affordable housing. The department recommends approval. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have the staff presentation. Yeah, sorry, project sponsor presentation.
Yeah.
And through the chair, you'll have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Teresia Nemeth. I represent Alexandria Real Estate Equities, Inc., who owns and has been working on this project for quite some time. We are very pleased with the presentation that the staff just gave you. It is comprehensive and provides all the details, so really I don't need to take more of your time other than to say we are seeking to make no change to this project other than to remove the underground private tennis club that was to be built on the site. So with that, I can make myself available to answer questions.
All right, we will now open this item up for public comment. Members of the public at City Hall wishing to make public testimony on this item, please come forward. Those calling in remotely, please press *3. Those joining via WebEx, please use the raise hand icon.
Greg Hulbert. I was just curious about the tennis and I think pickleball, that if the Bay Club was going to be a tenant there, why would they eliminate it since it was part of the original thing?
Seeing no additional commenters at City Hall, we will now go to our remote callers.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Bobby Carter. I own a home a couple blocks away from 88 Buxton. We were Teresa from Alexandria years ago. Introduced ourselves to her company, and about 1,800 members at the club. She and their company were very insistent on working together to always keep those tennis courts. So the fact that they're trying multiple times to eliminate them, including the Board of Appeals, who every member voted that we have to have those tennis courts there. I just don't understand why this is going back through planning again without those tennis courts. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Seth Sokolow. I'm the Executive Director of San Franciscans for Sports and Recreation. I just want to call the Planning Commission's attention to a letter that we sent on March 13, 2023. And I'll just read that letter briefly. It's only a few sentences. This letter confirms that San Franciscans for Sports and Recreation and Alexandria Real Estate Equities have reached an agreement regarding 88 Bluxom. Pursuant to this agreement, our organization, SFFSR, no longer seeks from the inclusion of a tennis facility on site, nor any other property in lieu of that site, and therefore has no continuing interest in the development. Accordingly, we are not taking and will not take any position regarding whatever Alexandria Real Estate Equities intends for this site. Thank you very much.
Last call for public comment. Please press *3, use the raise hand icon. Seeing no additional requests to speak, public comment is closed and the item is now before you.
Thank you. And we had a caller and Sarah here in person asking about the tennis courts. I think the last caller kind of answered the question, which is the organization, as I understand it, had an agreement to, I don't know if they're going to be the owner or operator or somehow connected to the tennis courts, is no longer pursuing that. I don't know if the project sponsor wanted to speak further to the tennis courts or anything else. Okay. Other comments, questions, or motions from commissioners? Commissioner Koppel.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, commissioners. There has been a motion that has been seconded to approve with conditions. Commissioner Braun?
Aye.
Commissioner Ruiz?
Aye.
Commissioner Imperial?
Aye.
Commissioner Diamond?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
And Commission President Tanner?
Aye.
Thank you, commissioners. That motion passes unanimously, and we'll take you on to your next item, item 15A, 2021-001407 SHD, adoption of shadow findings. Item 15B, record number 2021-001407 CTZ, a request for coastal zone permit. Item 15C, record number 2021-001407 CUA, a request for conditional use authorization. And item 15D, 2021-001407 PCA MAP, request for planning code text amendment and zoning map amendment, all at 2700 45th Avenue, the Irish Cultural Center.
Thanks, Laura. Good afternoon, President Tanner and Commissioners. Gabriela Pinto of Department Staff. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce Jonathan Goldberg with Supervisor Ingardio's office, who will make some opening remarks.
Good afternoon, President Tanner and Planning Commissioners. My name is Jonathan Goldberg, and I'm here on behalf of District 4 Supervisor Joel Ingardio. Supervisor Ingardio is pleased to sponsor this planning code amendment to create the Wawona Street and 45th Avenue Cultural Center Special Use District, located at 2700 45th Avenue. Since the United Irish Cultural Center opened its doors in 1975, the center has served as a storied home for the District 4 community event and cultural gatherings. But over the course of nearly 50 years, the center has outgrown its available space needs. The proposed special use district would facilitate the construction of a modern, state-of-the-art community center that will reactivate the street frontages and beautify the neighborhood. On behalf of Supervisor Ingardio, I want to thank SF Planning staff, Gabrielle Pinto, and City Attorney staff Julia Guacal-Nelson for their work on this. I also want to express our gratitude and appreciation to Leo Cassidy, Redmond Lyons, Liam Reedy for their creative vision and steadfast leadership efforts to champion this project. This place has a storied legacy, and we are grateful for their work to consider the needs of the United Irish Cultural Center for the next 50-plus years. Thank you, Commissioners. I hope we can have your support for this SUD and redeveloped community center project. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Once again, Gabriela Pinto of Department Staff. There are 4 items before you related to this project at 2700 45th Avenue, Assessor's Block 2513, Lot 26. The first item is an ordinance to amend the planning code and zoning map to create the Wawona Street and 45th Avenue Cultural Center Special Use District. The underlying zoning for the subject property is the NC1 zoning district and 100A height and bulk district. The special use district will principally permit general office, institutional, retail sales and service, wireless telecommunications facilities, nighttime entertainment, land uses at the site, reduce the transportation demand management requirements, and allow exceptions from floor area, rear yard, bulk requirements via conditional use authorization. The second item is a request for a conditional use authorization pursuant to pending special use district planning code section 249.96, Section 303, and board file number 230505, which would allow exemptions from the planning code sections 124, floor area, 134, rear yard, and 270 bulk. The third item is a request for a coastal zone permit pursuant to planning code section 330. And lastly, the fourth item is the adoption of shadow findings pursuant to planning code section 295, that the net new shadow cast by the project will not be adverse to the use of the San Francisco Zoo. The project itself is for the demolition of an existing 2-story community facility and the construction of a 6-story rear basement, 91-foot tall mixed-use building operated by the United Irish Cultural Center. The building will contain public and private community facilities, restaurant, bar, office, nighttime entertainment, and instructional use. Contain 54 off-street parking spaces, 2 car share spaces, and 52 Class 1 bicycle parking spaces. The project will also improve pedestrian walkways with a new ADA curb ramps, a new bulb out at the intersection of Wawona Street and 45th Avenue, loading zone, street trees, and 44 Class 2 bicycle parking spaces. Since the publishing of the case report, the department has not received any letters in opposition. However, the department did receive a letter from SPEAK, Sunset Parkside Education Action Committee, with questions and concerns related to the project. Prior to the submittal of the listed applications, the project sponsors did conduct a number of outreach efforts, including in-person meetings, the publishing of a monthly newsletter, and an active website. Over 200 community members have expressed support for the project. The department does find that the project is on balance and consistent with the Western Shoreline Area Plan and the objectives and policies of the general plan. The project will maintain a long-standing community member of the United Irish Cultural Center within the Outer Sunset neighborhood and help preserve an important part of San Francisco's history. Additionally, the project will expand the center's ability to enhance the lives by providing informal activities for all ages related to recreational, educational, and civic concerns, with a focus on preserving and reflecting the history of the Irish community. The project will also enhance and provide neighborhood-serving retail uses, opportunities, job opportunities, and business opportunities for the residents of the neighborhood. In conclusion, the department recommends that the Commission approve the proposed ordinance and adopt the resolution to that effect, approve the request for a conditional use authorization and coastal zone permit, and adopt the findings that the net new shadow by the proposed project will not be adverse to the use of San Francisco Sioux. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm available for any questions, and this project sponsor has prepared a presentation for you all.
Thank you. We will now have the project sponsor presentation. Through the chair, you will have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Liam Reedy. I'm the president of the United Irish Cultural Centre. I've been a director for the past 5 years and a member of the centre for the past 26 years. And I'm here today to voice my support for the redevelopment of the Irish Centre. And much of the motivation surrounds the fact that there is very few of these spaces in the southwest side of the city. Many of the people who come to us to rent our space, whether it's the Chinese cultural ballroom dancing or the Irish dancing schools or Branches Church, they're actually being forced out from other locations that have been torn down, and there is a dearth of these facilities across the city. We have a wonderful programming going on right now with kids programming. We can't wait to expand it into a bigger building. One of our biggest concerns is not having enough space for everybody who wants to rent the centre, not just the Irish American community, but everybody across the Sunset, near and far. We had a wonderful summer camp that we had to limit this past summer. It's the 3rd year we had an Irish summer camp. We had out of 75 kids. It was a huge success. All the parents come to me and said, Liam, we can't wait till we see what the new Irish Centre can give us. You'll see from the team here that we have a wonderful project that everybody seems to be behind, which is amazing in San Francisco. But these cultural spaces truly have to be preserved, and we have to reinvest going forward for the next 5 decades. So again, I urge you to support the project, and you'll hear more in detail about what we plan to provide, not just the Irish American community, the Sunset community, but the entire San Francisco Bay Area. Thank you.
SF Gov, we can get the laptop.
Thank you, Commissioners, for your time today. My name is Dane Bunton, principal at architecture firm Studio Bana, based here in San Francisco. With a strong presence in the Sunset District for over 40 years, the Irish Centre at its core is a place that not only represents the history and culture of Ireland, but also acts as an iconic community building, serving the people from all cultures and all walks of life. So its value and importance for all of us in this room is no secret. I'd like to walk you through the design concept we've developed with the Irish Centre team and very closely with the local community over the past 3 years. Our proposal includes a new 6-story building that is able to accommodate a greater variety of spaces dedicated solely to cultural and community-based programs, This diagram shows you a breakdown of the programs by floor. You can see there's a lot going on here, so I'll start at the 2 underground levels and then move up through the building. This is B2. This is an aquatics center level with a lap pool, kiddie pool, saunas, and a hot tub. B1 is a parking level. The ground floor, you'll see the lobby here. This is where you enter from 45th and Wawona. And then we have a ground floor museum featuring an Irish art gallery and a gift shop, as well as a continuation of the Emerald Pub and Restaurant, which is off of 45th Avenue. On the second floor, this is the St. Patrick's Room, which is one of the most important spaces to the UICC building. It's going to hold a number of large events, including a full theater for live performances, banquets, weddings, as well as dance performances and boxing. The third floor is the Dowling Library and more museum gallery program here. The fourth floor is an office level holding the admin offices, as well as Irish dance and language classrooms. And then the sixth floor is a roof deck featuring a full-service restaurant with views to the ocean, outdoor dining, and a members' party room, as well as an outdoor roof deck. So we conceptualize this building as a mass of solid limestone, which sits atop a glass box. This creates a dichotomy between the public programs and the members-only programs. The public programs, such as museum, restaurant, event space, and library, are conveniently located at the ground and first floor lower levels, which create a buzzing hub of activity activating the street level. The upper levels hold more of the member-focused programs, such as classrooms, offices, and a gym. Representing the 4 provinces of Ireland, the building massing is split into 4 quadrants that are broken via glass fissures and a glass roof, allowing for daylight to shine deep into the lower levels. The building form also takes cues from the Irish standing olm stones and the traditional thatched roof cottages of Ireland. The facade is clad with a slate rain screen, which is designed not only to withstand the seaside climate of the outer sunset, but it also represents traditional Irish building materials. So thank you very much for this opportunity. We're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
We will now open this up for public comment. Members of the public at City Hall wishing to make public testimony, please come forward and line up on the screen side of the room. Those calling in remotely, please press *3 or use the raise hand icon via WebEx. And you will have 3 minutes.
All right, hello. Thank you so much for letting me speak today. My name is Jake Woodfin. I live on 46th and Vicente, and I am also the pastor of Branches Church in the Sunset District, outer Sunset District. When we were first looking for a space to meet about 2 years ago, it was extremely hard to find one out there in the outer Sunset, and we finally came across the Irish Cultural Center, and we felt like it was a godsend. I mean, the rent is great, and they're always, they don't price gouge us or anything like that, and they're also so kind to us with the church life. It's always in flux, and it's always up and downs, and always like last minute, and they're always there to helpful to us. And as a nonprofit, they really understand the needs of a nonprofit as well, and they've always been there to meet our needs as that goes as well. Now, if I was being completely selfish, I would say leave it exactly the way it is. Don't change anything, all right? Because it is just perfect for us. Our people that mostly come from the outer Sunset and walk to the place, it's excellent in every single way. But we also have this core value, and this core value of our church and in my own life as well comes from the Bible, where it says that as we have opportunity to do good to all people, that we should take that opportunity. And even Jesus himself, that he came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. And so for us, if I was going to be selfish, I could say, yeah, don't do it because of this. But if our goal is the flourishing of our city, our goal is the flourishing of our neighborhood, then I could see no better way than to build this new center. I know it could be set for the flourishing of the Sunset, where families can gather and celebrate community events together and celebrate birthday parties and weddings and just memorialize the death of loved ones, where it could be a hub of laughter and joy in the outer Sunset as well, but also good for the flourishing of our city, where people could come over from the other parts of the city to experience everything the West Side has to offer and just enjoy all the events that they put on at the center, as well as just for the flourishing of the broader community, Irish community within California and the United States and even around the world. Well, this will be just a beacon of hope to remember their history history and things that make them a cultural people. And so again, if I was being selfish, I would say leave it the way it is, but to think through the flourishing of our city, to think through the flourishing of our neighborhood, the Sunset, and to think through the flourishing of the broader Bay Area, then I would say approve this, because I think it will add so much good to the people here in San Francisco. Thank you so much.
Commissioners, how are you? My name is Jennifer Chadwick. I currently serve as the Vice Consul General of Ireland here on the Western United States. I'm here on behalf of Micheál Smith, our Consul General, and we have a letter that we'd like to enter into the record in order to express our support of this endeavour. I'm happy to read some of it now, but in the interest of time, I may paraphrase some elements of the letter if that's okay with you. Dear Commissioners of the San Francisco Planning Commission, my name is Micheál Smith, and since August 2022, I've served as Ireland's Consul General to the Western United States at our Consulate General based in San Francisco. The United Irish Cultural Centre was first established in the city in 1975, and since its construction, Irish people and the diaspora have considered the centre to be a second home. Built entirely by volunteer labour and community contributions, the centre opened its door to immigrants from across the island of Ireland. And since its foundation, the centre and its volunteers have worked tirelessly to create a welcoming, dynamic and positive environment with a calendar full of cultural and sporting opportunities to engage with. Importantly, these activities are not just for the enjoyment of Irish citizens, but also for all San Francisco residents. And this has been clear to me since the moment I arrived in San Francisco. The United Irish Cultural Centre is undoubtedly one of our most important partners as a consulate in the Western United States, and its significance cannot be understated. The strength of the Irish diaspora is visible across the region. There are approximately 750,000 people of Irish descent in the Bay Area and 2.3 million in the state of California. The Cultural Centre is a consistent partner of the Irish Government's Emigrant Support Programme, an initiative that demonstrates Ireland's support of, commitment to and interest in the global Irish community. We as a consulate regularly collaborate and work with the Centre on events and cultural projects, as well as with many other Irish organisations who use the Centre's facilities to conduct their work. The current leadership of the Irish Centre have a vision to reconstruct and redesign the present space that will result in a new fit-for-purpose building that will provide not just to our community, but also to the entire San Francisco community as a whole. While the Centre has served the community well in its current format, Project 2025 endeavours to create a sustainable centre that will provide for many generations into the future. The board made clear that the space at present is limiting the centre from exploring and facilitating other cultural programming opportunities, as well as offering increased services to other organisations and community members. The committee have considered all possible options as to how remodelling or reconstruction would best serve the community and the city, and have worked for many months and years with a number of stakeholders to bring Project 2025 to where it is today. The enthusiasm of the community to support the original construction of the centre with their own labour and talent still exists today for this initiative, with many citizens recognising the value that a new centre could bring to the city of San Francisco. The city of San Francisco and its culture is evidently diverse in terms of the arts, music and theatre, which all residents enjoy and appreciate. But importantly, this new flagship centre, when completed, will increase the diversity of the centre's outreach. I am confident that this building will serve as a flagship cultural centre in the state of California, offering state-of-the-art facilities for cultural programming, digital arts, meeting spaces.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
You can leave the letter if you'd like to.
That would be great.
For the record.
Thank you again.
Any additional speakers at City Hall, please come forward. Seeing none, we will now move on to our remote callers.
If you want to come forward,
now's the time. 1 second, remote callers. Please line up on the screen side of the room if you intend to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honorable Commissioners. My name is Mark Conroe. I'm here today to discuss the exciting prospects of community centers throughout San Francisco, with a focus on enhancing the crucial and significant contribution they make to San Francisco. I've lived and worked in San Francisco for over 20 years, and I've run my own small business out of San Francisco during these 2 decades. During this time, I've served as a board member and volunteer at a number of San Francisco nonprofits to include SF Jazz, City Team Homeless Shelter, San Francisco Child Abuse Council, and Sarah Preschool. First, I'd like to thank the staff for the professional, effective, and efficient approach they've taken to this project. It's really been a pleasure to work with them. I've gone through the approval process on a number of projects in San Francisco, and this was my best experience. Having volunteered at the Irish Center and being involved with other centers in the city, I can genuinely tell you about the crucial contributions they make to San Francisco social life. I was part of the small team that designed, financed, and built SF Jazz Concert Hall. The same thoughtful, methodical process that was used to create that wonderful space was used in conceiving and designing this new Irish Center. Like SF Jazz, this center will invigorate its neighborhood and serve the local community and the greater Bay Area, sending the message to everyone, conveying what makes San Francisco great. One small example, and then I'll close. The tech museum that's been designed there is tech infused. I think it'll be unusual for not only the Bay Area, but for the U.S. There'll be exhibits that are truly unique in terms of the use of cutting-edge technology. So we're excited as one of the aspects of this new building to bring that to San Francisco and the Bay Area. I'll close by just thanking you for your attention. I eagerly anticipate the possibilities that lie ahead with this community center and all of them in San Francisco. Thank you.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Ivor Collins. I'm a longtime resident of San Francisco. I'm a real estate agent here in the city, and I also live in the Outer Avenues. In addition to this, I am a musician who has performed at countless events out in the existing Irish Centre. And although these events have gone off very well, and many other musicians have played out there, I personally feel like the current Irish Centre is not quite up to the standards of the modern day needs. And I think the community as a whole, not just the Irish community, would be much better served by a new Irish Centre. In addition to this, the artists, musicians, members of the literary public over in Ireland who travel to the US, they generally at the moment seem to just stop at the East Coast, be it Boston, Washington, New York. And I don't personally feel like we have a beacon for these traveling Irish artisans, musicians and whatnot. And I think this proposed development would serve as a fantastic beacon for them here in our wonderful city of San Francisco. I strongly urge you all to consider it. Again, I think it will serve the entire community as a whole very well, and I'm excited to see it move forward, and I know that I speak for a number of my peers when I say that. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm just going to make it brief. The outreach, we've done a lot of outreach. We had a meeting in August 28, 2020, where we had the mayor, the current mayor and ex-mayors, and we had people from Sacramento and a local supervisor of the district. And we had 2 meetings after that on May the 7th, 2021, and also...
I just wanted to pause the time. Are you part of the project sponsor team?
I'm a volunteer. Well, I guess I am. But anyway, if there's questions for the outreach, you can please give me a heads up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I might follow up on some thoughts and ideas that part of the team may have had and didn't have time to finish. I'm not going to say much. This has been excellent. I've been sitting at a distance watching this play out. It's been phenomenal. Leah was going to mention the outreach. There's talk here about the programs, the buildings, the architects are here. I'm sure you guys are going to have a lot of questions. I'm going to sit down and just say there's a ton of support for this. This was handled professionally and was executed very well by the team, and it lies in front of you now. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to our remote callers.
Eileen Bogan with Speak. Speak has a number of concerns regarding this proposed project. Many were included in written comments to the Board of Appeals for 2700 Sloat versus the ZA bulk determination, which was upheld. The area is on sand dunes, not bedrock, in a tsunami zone. The San Andreas Fault is offshore. Ocean Beach gets high wind velocity during extreme weather events. The site is in the fog belt. In 2024, traffic from the Great Highway north of Sloat will be directed onto this section of Sloat before turning onto Skyline Boulevard. And finally, it is directly across from the zoo. It speaks understanding that even before the pandemic, the UICC went out of business, but now they are proposing a major expansion with many upscale amenities. This is despite the neighborhood experiencing a significant demographic shift. At one time, District 4 was heavily Irish. This is no longer the case, either in District 4 or citywide. District 4 is still heavily working class, which is inconsistent with the proposed project. This SUD would only be the second SUD in District 4, with the Terraville Street Restaurant Sub-District SUD being the first. Both the bulk and SUD request would set a precedent and a potential ripple effect onto adjacent sites. Therefore, Speak strongly urges the Commission not to approve the SUD, as this seems to be a recent addition, not to approve the LCP permit, and not to approve the floor area ratio and bulk exemptions of the CUA. Thank you.
I'm a resident of the Sunset District, and it's ironic that the street address for the Irish Cultural Center is 2700 45th Avenue. But these amendments and authorizations are also aimed at 2700 Sloat Boulevard, right across the street. And it's not ironic that 2700 45th Avenue, the Irish Cultural Center, also has the same law firm as 2700 Sloat Boulevard. And I hope this, these changes that are being proposed are not a sneaky way to pave the way for 50 stories at 2700 Sloat Boulevard. For that reason, I urge the Commission to vote these amendments and authorizations down. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tony Bucher. I was born in San Francisco and I'm descended from Irish immigrants who arrived here in 1880. For more than 20 years, I've participated and hosted numerous cultural events at the United Irish Cultural Center, where I now serve on the board, and also as president of the Irish Literary and Historical Society. I would like to speak in support of the new building project at the site of the current center. As has been described, the center was built with volunteer work by members of the community in the early 1970s. Working class, I might add, members of the community. Today it serves as the vital center of the thriving Irish American community in the larger Bay Area, a community with deep historic roots in almost every aspect, cultural, economic, political, and religious, of life in San Francisco since before the gold rush. Although the beloved facility is aging, the center has enjoyed an amazing revival in activity since the pandemic. So it is not a failing organization at all. You go on any weekend, you can see dozens, if not hundreds of people there. A broad variety of events there have been packed with attendees in the past 2 years. Everything from dance recitals to concerts and comedy nights to book readings, which have drawn hundreds of attendees. And the facility is in high demand from members of the broader Sunset and West Side communities, as there is a scarcity of meeting rooms and public gathering spaces in that part of the city. The new facility promises to provide really dramatically better spaces for these vital cultural gatherings, and even more for the community at large. The new space will include a library and museum and event spaces. But we have a lot of community ephemera for our more than gathered from our more than 170 years in San Francisco and in the Greater West. And so we have great ambitions for the museum and the cultural facilities, the library as well. So this museum and library will pay tribute and preserve the stories and material from our long and varied history here. Certainly maintaining and invigorating our own culture and presence is important to the Irish community, but also outreach to the broader communities as well. I hope that you will grant your approval to this excellent new project. Thank you very much.
Hi, yes. My name is Raymond Kwong, and I've been renting UICC for over a year and a half for Asian social dance events. And I've rented also many other venues during the last 15 years. But UICC is the most professional and wonderful group of people I've ever worked with. We've used our events to celebrate people's birthdays, and it has been a ton of fun, and I cannot imagine without such a venue. I've also participated in a musical performance and competition events there with over 200 people. UICC indeed is a great resource for southwest part of the city. I fully support their project as it will benefit the entire community in more ways than one. I have called many venues the last 2 to 3 years, trying to book more social events, and many have closed down. We need an expanded UICC. We need a new floor because the floor they have now could use some new service. Lastly, we have not had any problems finding parking spaces there, and I'm delighted to see that there will be underground parking. Well, thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Eileen Mize, and I wish to lend my support to the United Irish Cultural Center plans for this new building. As a third-generation San Franciscan and proud Irish American, I've been part of the Irish community in various capacities over many years, and most significant involvement has been through Irish step dancing. The Irish Center has long played host to local competitions and dance events that are vital to the success of our local Irish dance community and to the great benefit of thousands of young people annually. Though no longer a competitor myself, I enjoy watching my niece and supporting other young people carrying on this tradition. Currently, the Irish Center hosts about 4 to 5 different dance schools that hold regular classes at the Irish Center. Plus, there's a youth summer camp program that includes dance and other Irish arts. In fact, during the pandemic, it was the Irish Center that thought to make use of their back parking area to create an outdoor practice space that allowed for dancers to practice safely during the days of heightened pandemic restrictions. The Irish Center is very focused on building for the next generation of Irish Americans, and that is something I can definitely get behind. In addition, I direct a special project sponsored by the Irish Cultural Center called Keepers of the Steps, which is a growing collection of San Francisco Irish dance history, stories, and ephemera. And the Irish Center has fully supported this project, and we are building a collection of rich history that dates back to the mid-1800s. The proposed new space calls for dedicated museum and digital arts area that would allow for our program to further flourish and be made more widely available to dance scholars around the world. We are working on a partnership currently with a National Archive project that would allow us to bring our dance history in San Francisco into the network with the New York Public Library Dance Division. And having a dedicated space at the Irish Cultural Center will allow us to move forward on such a project. We have so many ideas for programming and events that would include a broad spectrum of community members, and the proposed new space would allow for this. So thank you for the opportunity to allow me to speak on behalf of this beloved cultural treasure.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Evan Rosen, resident of the Parkside. Cultural centers are important to the diversity and heritage of our city. Yet neighbors and residents of the Sunset Parkside have some major concerns with the coastal zone permit, the special use district, and the CUA for this huge expansion that is by the zoo and in the coastal zone. The project sponsor seeks exceptions from bulk requirements in a special use district. And let's acknowledge that this project is right next door to 2700 Sloat, the proposed 50-story tower according to plans, and both projects are apparently using the same law firm. And it certainly seems that this proposed upscale emporium of restaurants and nighttime entertainment and recreational facilities would certainly be dependent on the residents of the planned next door development at 2700 Slope to pay the bills. So from the point of view of the Planning Commission, it would be prudent and responsible to consider approval of this project as paving the way for 2700 Slope. This project would set a precedent for development in the coastal zone and for a special use district intended to remove zoning and planning guidelines for this little neighborhood. Let's make sure we don't set any sort of precedent here. I would encourage you to think about how your vote today will impact the zoo, the coast, the ocean, and the middle-class neighborhood of homes, and set the stage for the 2700 Slope project. I certainly urge you to deny the CUA, the coastal zone permit, and the other elements of this project. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kate Gunning. I'm the Executive Director of SF Irish Film. We actually work with the Centre and have an opportunity to partner with them on a lot of projects. Unfortunately, the Centre right now is not currently able to show any type of film or even any type of live performance, theatre performance. We've been in operation in San Francisco for over 20 years, and we are always scrambling to find a location where we can screen Irish film for 2 of our festivals. And if we had the opportunity, we would be able to show a lot more film over the course of the year. So this is a really important project. The opportunity here to enrich the local community, to expand access to Irish arts through the whole of San Francisco, and to have it all in one space where we can actually host Irish cultural artists coming over to share their talents with the wider San Francisco community. The majority of people who actually come to our festivals are non-Irish folks who just love the opportunity to see Irish film. We also partner with other organizations like Mill Valley Film Festival, the United Nations Film Festival, and this will give us an opportunity to be able to do even more shared events with these organizations. So we highly, highly support this program and this opportunity to have a central location to share a wider range of Irish arts with the wider San Francisco community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susan Wolf. I live a block away, and there has been no community outreach that I know about. I have never gotten anything in the mail. I have never had anything slipped under my door about this project. The community outreach is probably the bare minimum of what was required for the people living in the small apartments that are on the same block, whose lives will be pretty much miserable by this project. The casting of the shadow upon their buildings, their noise. The Irish Cultural Center has not been a good neighbor. I can hear their noise a block away. They have no concern for the people in the neighborhood. I have had cars ticketed and towed from in front of my house more than once. Not one person from the Irish Cultural Center was at the meeting where the MTA decided to take away 10% of the parking by the zoo for another lane of entitled bicycle riders. Not one person. If they're going to have this community center, I doubt highly that the people are going to be coming by Muni, because the Muni out here sucks. And it has sucked since forever, pretty much. And there is not enough parking with 56 spots. And are those 56 spots for the members with the highest level of membership, like it used to be when the parking lot that was turned into a music venue used to be for cars? And because I read something where the people at the highest level could park there. So this 56 spaces of parking may only be for the highest level of members who have paid enough money to get the privilege. I cannot imagine retail existing and thriving in this neighborhood unless it is all retail from the members who have contributed to the building of this center, who are going to be profiting from like little or no rent. I cannot imagine a public small business being able to afford the price, and there's no foot traffic out here. There's none. There's people walking their dogs, and there's people like going to the beach. It's not a walking area for shopping. And also, it's going to make the whole area so congested with cars. I am against this project 1,000% because of the experiences that I have had dealing with the Irish Cultural Center living a block away. Thank you.
Last call for public comment. If you're in City Hall, please come forward. Those calling in remotely, press *3. Use the raise hand icon via WebEx. I see we have one additional speaker on WebEx.
Hi, this is Mark Dowley. I'm an SF resident. I'm asking to support the project. The Cultural Center hosts a pretty regular Irish traditional music session where you can learn Irish traditional music. I haven't had much connection to my Irish heritage in my life, and so it's just been a really nice place to learn traditional Irish violin music. I've enjoyed their programming, and I think they could provide having them a larger space could help them provide even better services to the community. The building is just not that crazy. It's only 6 stories. 2 blocks down, there's a condo building that's 5 stories. I mean, it's just not that crazy a project. So I think it's a bit wild to think it's going to turn into 50 stories by approving this. I hope you support the project.
Thank you. That concludes public comment, and the item is now before you.
Thank you, and thank staff and thank the project sponsor for bringing this forward. I'm very excited about this project, and I'll be happy to support it today. I think that we need more spaces like this, as we heard, the scarcity of community gathering space, and we have a number of cultural heritage halls across the city that I hope they can take inspiration from this and also be revitalized and have their next 50, 100 years of service, not just for their communities, but as we know, this center serves more than just the Irish American community. So thank you for being here, for bringing this project forward. We did hear a few questions. I want to ask maybe the project sponsor, I don't know if the architect's the right person, I would imagine that there would be better sound attenuation in a newer building that's updated. So maybe if you could speak a little bit to how noise might be more mitigated in a new facility than it might be in the current facility.
Sure. So we're doing a couple things to mitigate sound. One is putting the entry off of the residential corridor, off of Wawona. It'll be on 45th. That'll include the restaurant entry that's currently in its place at the Irish Center. We're also setting back on the upper levels from that residential corridor to mitigate sound. We've also designed the program to be designed so that some of the more quieter programs, for example, the stage back of house is facing the residential corridor and not the more loud, potentially loud things like a theater or big gathering spaces.
Great. And then as far as parking, could you just walk us through, it is going to be a very popular, even more popular location, I imagine, and have more capacity. Just what were the conversations as you designed the project about what's the right amount of parking or where guests or patrons would park and bike and transit? Just tell us kind of a little bit about that.
Yeah, we'll be keeping the parking location from Wawona where it currently is. Right now, that space has turned into the Wawona Gates outdoor, basically an event center. So another issue of noise is we're taking all of that inside with this new proposal. So in terms of parking, we have 54 parking spaces. There's going to be a number of bike spaces that are added to the sidewalk. And then we have loading and unloading zones on both 45th and Wawona.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm going to call in some other commissioners. I see their hands are up. Commissioner Imperial.
Yeah. Thank you, President Tanner. Just like you, I enthusiastically support this cultural center and the creation of SUD around this. I think it is fitting in this neighborhood to have this cultural center given the history of the Irish community in San Francisco as well. And I think I also would like to inform the public that cultural centers or cultural districts are not a place of segregation, but a place of celebrating culture and celebrating history as well. And the reason that cultural centers or cultural districts exist is to coexist with other communities as well, and at the same time educate also the importance of the history in its place, and also the importance of the history of the diaspora itself. I, as an immigrant, see the importance of cultural centers when there are, like music entertainers coming from Ireland, or in my case, from the Philippines, would come to San Francisco. That is a good opportunity for myself to feel belonged as well, or reconnected with my heritage. So I do support and understand the need for the cultural center, and I'm glad to see that it's also going to be open in public in some of the open. So I see this as a good opportunity to actually learn the history of Irish heritage, and for other publics as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Koppel?
Yeah, I'm more than confident this group did their due diligence with all their outreach. They're very established being in their location, so they've already been a part of this community. I'm not going to hesitate to make some motions here. I'm going to move to adopt the shadow findings on 15A, approve 15B and C, and then recommend approval to the BOS on 15D.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Diamond?
So I am also an enthusiastic supporter of this project, and will tell you why in a moment. But I want to address one, or at least hear from staff on one question that was raised by several commenters, and that's whether our approval of this project in any way has an impact on deliberations we may or may not have on the future on 2700 Sloat. Does creating the SUD here in any way create a precedent or move us in a direction that is more likely to result in an approval for that project? An issue raised by two of the commenters.
Yeah, good question, Commissioner Diamond. Gabriela Pacheco, Department staff. So the SUD is crafted only for the subject lot. So there are no impacts, and there's not an overlay district that will impact, say, the adjacent property at 2700 Sloat Boulevard. So the SUD and its creation is very much limited to the subject lot.
Okay. Thank you very much for clarifying that for the record. I am a huge supporter of community centers in general in our city. I agree with the commenter who talked about how important they are to the functioning of our city for people of all ages. I've had the fortunate experience of being deeply involved with the Jewish Community Center, which is on the north side of the park, which, similar to the Irish Cultural Center, went through a period of rebuilding its community center. It is open and welcoming to everybody, as will be this community center. It's a place filled with life, learning, and laughter. It serves people of all ages, and it is absolutely critical to the functioning of our city to have places where people can gather, to celebrate, to learn, to exercise. And I think that it is a joyous occasion to have a project in front of us that's like this one, so that we can exercise our votes in creating something so wonderful for the city. I also want to acknowledge that I assume this project involves a capital campaign of some sort, and that's a huge investment of time, and want to thank you for making that effort to help improve our city.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Diamond.
Thank you, Commissioners. If there is no further deliberation, there was a motion that has been seconded to adopt shadow findings, approve the coastal zone permit, approve with conditions the conditional use authorization, and recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors of the Planning Code text amendment and zoning map amendment for item 15A, B, C, and D. On that motion, Commissioner Braun?
Aye.
Commissioner Ruiz?
Aye.
Commissioner Imperial?
Aye.
Commissioner Diamond?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
And Commission President Tanner?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously. I would like to note that item number 16 has been continued to November 2nd, and that will now place us on item number 17, record number 2019-004772, CUA at 3250 to 70 18th Street. This is a request for conditional use authorization.
We're going to take a break, and we'll return in about 10 minutes. Thank you.
Great.
SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television.
call item number 17, record number 2019-004772, CUA at 3250 to 70 18th Street.
Commissioner Diamond needs to make a disclosure.
Yes, I wanted to let the Commission know, as I have on several prior occasions, that Mr. Joel Roos is associated with the project management team for this project. And in the past, he and I have been affiliated with many of the same projects where I was the attorney for the project and he was either the board, these were all nonprofit projects, where he was either the board member or the project manager for the project. That ended in 2019 when I joined the Planning Commission. However, he and I are both still on the board of Temple Emmanuel, and he's become a friend through all of these projects where we've worked together. However, none of that will in any way affect my ability to be impartial and neutral in judging the merits of this particular project.
Thank you, Commissioner Diamond.
Thank you. We will now have staff presentation.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good afternoon. Monica Giacomucci, Planning Department staff. The item before you is a request for a conditional use authorization of a planned unit development pursuant to Planning Code Sections 209.2, 303, and 304 to expand an existing school use in an RH3 zoning district, to modify the rear yard requirements of Planning Code Section 134, and to modify the bicycle parking requirements of Section 155.2 for La Scuola International School on a site in excess of 1/2 acre and located within an RH3 zoning district, a 55X height and bulk district. The project site consists of 2 lots at 3250 and 3270 18th Street, respectively, which will be merged as part of the project. This item was continued 1 week from last week's hearing to allow for further coordination with community groups. Pardon me, and on July 19th, our Historic Preservation Commission unanimously approved a certificate of appropriateness for this same scope of work. And that's because one of the buildings on the site is landmark 139, the St. Charles School. The property is improved with a 2-story wood frame school building constructed in 1888 and used as a school since 1895. It's believed to be one of the only wood frame school buildings remaining in San Francisco and was built as part of the larger St. Charles Borromeo complex, generally clustered around 18th Street and South Van Ness Avenue. La Scuola was established in 2002 and has occupied the project site since 2019. At that time, La Scuola International School began leasing this and one other property located at 741 South Van Ness that was associated with the church complex to serve as a campus for kindergarten through 8th grade students. Representatives from La Scuola are here today, and I'll, of course, allow them to speak on their history, the history of this project, and the overall development of the campus around 18th and South Van Ness. The proposal before you today would not substantially alter the landmark St. Charles School building, but would merge the 2 lots, as I mentioned, demolish 3 existing portable classrooms on the site, and construct a new 4-story, 20,370 square foot school building and rehabilitate and expand the play yard. The new building would reserve space for a mural on its west wall, and St. Charles would be improved with new safety lighting, but otherwise would remain largely untouched, as I mentioned. The project is requesting approval as a planned unit development, or PUD, to allow expansion of a school use and to modify bicycle parking and rear yard requirements. The project site is located in an RH3 zoning district where institutional uses such as schools are conditionally permitted, so therefore their expansion requires approval by this commission. As for bicycle parking, the project will include 15 classrooms, and therefore strict application of the planning code would require 60 Class 1 and 15 Class 2 spaces. Instead, the project proposes 36 Class 1 and 14 Class 2 spaces, which will be located adjacent to St. Charles School and serve both buildings. And finally, the existing school building is non-complying with respect to rear yard requirements, and the proposed new school building would likewise encroach into the required rear yard area. So all of these collectively mean that the project is pursuing a PUD for modification of requirements. Since the staff report was republished last week, the department has received letters of support from 127 individuals, and 1 letter in opposition was sent to you last night from local community advocacy group United to Save the Mission. The La Scuola team has undertaken community outreach efforts to inform neighbors and the broader mission community about the project and its changes since 2019. La Scuola has hosted multiple meetings within the community, including in February and August of 2019, and again in March 2023. Likewise, the project sponsor team has hosted meetings and communicated with representatives from local community groups. In addition to meetings, they are in regular voluntary communication with adjacent residential neighbors to notify them of school events, maintenance and repairs, daily operations, and any other school events relevant to adjacent properties. I'll, of course, allow their team to elaborate further on their community outreach approach during their presentation time. On balance, the department finds that the project is consistent with the intent of the objectives and policies of the general plan and the mission area plan. The purpose of the project is to protect and upgrade the existing 140-year-old St. Charles School building while providing modern, safe, and innovative learning spaces in the new school building. And the department recommends approval with conditions as provided in your staff report. And speaking of your staff report, I wanted to read some revisions into the record. These were sent to you via email last week, and the red line draft motion was included in the packet that was posted online for this week's hearing and that you would have received. But I will just quickly reiterate those for the record. First, on page 7, we stated that the project will be subject to the Transportation Sustainability Fee, or TSF. However, staff was notified that the project sponsor will seek an exemption from the TSF as a certified 501c3 nonprofit organization after the staff report had already been published. So findings have been corrected to reflect that the project sponsor will provide the standard required documentation related to our process for TSF exemptions. And secondly, a condition of approval has been added on page 21 related to pickup and drop off queue management strategies and monitoring. Specifically, the sponsor has agreed to ensure that adjacent intersections and driveways are not blocked by pickup and drop off activity. And additionally, if the planning department suspects that vehicle queues persist, or if the school reaches an enrollment of 350 students, whichever of those occurs first, the sponsor agrees to hire a qualified transportation consultant to prepare a report evaluating conditions at the site. Such report will then be submitted to planning department staff for review, and if the department determines a queuing issue does exist, the property owner will have 90 days to implement measures described in the La Scuola Traffic Management Plan, which was included in your packets from the beginning. I will not be reading the full text of either of those changes, but I do have a copy of the draft motion if we need that read into the record or if you'd like me to. And this concludes my presentation. The sponsor team is here and they have a presentation prepared as well, and we're all happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, project sponsor. Through the chair, you will have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Valentina Imbeni. I'm the founding head of La Scuola. La Scuola was founded 20 years ago as a group of Italian language lovers and Italian-American parents who wanted to reconnect with the Italian language and culture. It's now grown into a Reggio Emilia-inspired pre-K-8 IB school with over 300 students. At the very heart of the Reggio Emilia pedagogy lies a focus on building relationships, community, democracy, and a beautiful learning environment. We consider the school environment to be the third teacher. Architecture and design are deeply connected to our pedagogy, specifically when spaces are built with children in mind. We have grown intentionally to be a diverse, multicultural, and multilingual community with over 30 languages spoken in the homes of our families. We offer an Italian-English immersion program and are one of the first independent schools to offer a Spanish track differentiated for native speakers. We also offer an international education through the IB curriculum framework. Some of our founding principles are equity and accessibility, and we are committed to sliding scale tuition, which supports currently 30% of our families. We are active within the community, both locally and globally, and collaborate with other schools in the mission, both public and independent, and with neighborhood and community organizations. We view this new school building not only as a home for our students, but as a resource for the neighborhood. We found our home in the mission in 2018 and specifically chose this neighborhood for its vibrant culture, diversity, and history, and to be able to offer a high-quality education to children of all backgrounds. We are very excited to bring life back to the historic St. Charles School site that unfortunately closed after over a century of educating mission neighborhood children. We moved quickly with design and planning until the pandemic forced us to freeze these efforts. 4 years later, we are here and very excited to be moving forward with momentum. And with that, I introduce you to Emily Gozak, the principal of Jensen Architects, to share many more details about the project, and I thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Emily Gossick, Principal at Jensen Architects, and we are the local architect of record for the project, leading the local team and working in collaboration with La Scuola, of course, and also ZPZ Architects, who are in Italy and who bring expertise in the Reggio approach to architecture. So the project will allow the school, of course, to expand its enrollment with 9 new classrooms, expanded building area, expanded play yard, some of which is on top of the new building. We are adding 0 car parking spaces, but 50 bike parking spaces, as Monica mentioned. So in general, the project will allow the school to continue to be a safe, welcoming, and active presence in the Mission, both now on 18th as well as Shotwell, as they have been. This is the project site in the Mission neighborhood. This is the existing aerial of the site, and you'll see there the St. Charles building on the lower right-hand corner, southeast corner of the site, and the play yard extending from 18th up all the way through to Shotwell. 3 existing portable classrooms are located on the site, and they will all be removed as part of the project. The new renovated play yard creates a gap between the 2 buildings, and you see the new building balancing the St. Charles building on the southwest corner of the site. The renovated play yard again extending from 18th all the way up through to Shotwell. And you see the existing white zones, which are in use today and will continue to be used in the future. So this is just to say that the original project as proposed in 2019 did include substantial changes to St. Charles, but those are no longer part of the project. And then a few slides to show just how the 18th Street facade has evolved in response to planning comments to develop these 3 zones that respond to the character of the St. Charles facade, as well as the fenestration pattern on the east facade, which faces directly onto St. Charles. Those window sizes and patterns were derived directly from St. Charles, which the next slide shows in a bit more detail. And then the next slide is the palette. So the palette consists of a variety of stucco colors, which are derived from the St. Charles colors, some accent colors, which are very important to the school's curriculum and bring a sense of joy and play into the building, as well as some accent planting. So these are just a few details to show those security components that Monica mentioned. The school has experienced security issues in the play yard in the past, and in order to protect the safety of the children in the play yard, a few components are added. The lighting on St. Charles, next slide. The fences will be replaced to bolster the security, but with a very similar fence type. And then this is showing that the building is within the 50-foot height limit. Next slide. And some floor plans showing you that the entry is on 18th. You move down through the building with a ramp to the play yard, and then up onto the roof. You can see the added play yard and teaching spaces there. A few last slides just to talk about how our design.
Thank you. That is your time.
Okay,
They may have questions and ask you up later.
Absolutely. Happy to answer questions. Thanks.
Thank you. At this time, we will have public comment. Members of the public who are here, please come forward and line up on the screen side of the room. Those calling in remotely, please press *3 or use the raise hand function via WebEx. And you will have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Kimi Okada. I am with ODC, a 52-year-old dance organization that includes a professional company, a theater, a presenting theater, and a school. We have been on the Shotwell Street side of between 17th and 18th for 43 years and have seen a lot happen in that neighborhood. I am a founding member of ODC, the director of the school, and the associate choreographer for the company. Since moving across the street from us in 2019, La Scuola has been a great neighbor and a real asset to our street and immediate neighborhood. They've brought much-needed families to our community, and we have shared dance classes, space, and mutually attended public events. They have facilitated connection between our neighbors and businesses to improve the quality of the cleanliness and the safety of the whole street and the neighborhood. And their staff and faculty has been incredibly open and receptive to the needs of the neighborhood. We totally support this expansion. And knowing full well that La Scuola will only further enhance and vitalize our street and neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Enrique Espinoza, and I represent Robbins Cafe inside the ODC building on the corner of 17th and Shotwell. And I just want to say that we support La Scuola and the kids that go there, and I just see it as enhancing our community. So thank you for your time, and have a good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam President and Commissioners. My name is Mauricio Chavez, and I'm an organizer for the NorCal Carpenters Union. I was chosen to represent over 37,000 members that we represent here in the northern 46 counties of the state. In addition, the 3,000 plus members, more particularly here in San Francisco. I come before you today as a leader in today's labor movement. The name labor movement conjures thoughts and images of yelling in the streets, picketing and striking, and sometimes destroyed property and all-out riots. However, this is it. This is the labor movement. The labor movement lives in rooms like this and this one all across America. This is where both you and I can literally create jobs and put Americans back to work. This is where we maintain labor standards and help jumpstart the economy. I did not know it when I was hired, but being an organizer for the Carpenters Union means I am directly responsible for the survival of the members in which I was chosen to represent, as well as working to get the unrepresented carpenter organized. This has quickly become a passion for me, and look forward to helping people feed their families and be doing the Lord's work for the next 20 years. In addition, the best part about it all is knowing that when my time comes, I will be able to retire with dignity. My members will be able to retire with dignity. I don't know about you, commissioners, but I, for one, am not keen on working until I'm 80 because I can't afford to retire. La Escuela has chosen to do the right thing by the people who are going to build the building in which San Francisco's youngest and brightest are learning. They have no doubt in their mind that it will be built right the first time with the local workforce who is trained on the most up-to-date and newest technologies. La Escuela knows that the contractor they've chosen will not be trafficking in the workforce from across country lines. The contractor will not be using coyotes to get them into this country. La Escuela knows that the contractor they've chosen does the right thing and can therefore be at ease and feel comfort with being a great partner in this neighborhood. A school that if I can afford to live here where I work, I would send my son to. And with that, I will say I support this project. We as an organization and regional council support this project and look forward to working with you and many more in the future. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon or good evening. My name is Damika Johnson. I'm from Local 22, and I was part of the first all-women's apprentice program, and I graduated, and I have yet to be dispatched. So I think that this would be a wonderful opportunity for me to display and show everything that I've learned. And I am a San Francisco resident. I live on 16th and Mission, so that's not too far from my house. And it would just be a pleasure to work on this project. I support it to the fullest, and just thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Marsanne Weiss. I am a board member of 1 year of La Escuela, and I'm also a parent. My daughter has gone to La Escuela for 9 years. We started at Dog Patch, Fell Street, and we were so excited when we got the Mission campus. Being a Latina mother, it was great because we got the diversity of Mission. And one of the things that La Escuela supports, shows with regards to children from the time they start is community. Community in the classroom, community with your family, community with your school, and they proceed to teach at every level community. And one of the things is, I remember my daughter coming home and saying, "Mom, there's more than the US. Mom, there's the world. There's a solar system." And this was, by the way, when she was in preschool. So now when we got to Mission, they were excited about the Mission. We live in the Bayview. And my kids both daughters go to dance class right next to the Mission. They are often found at Robin's Cafe, along with a number of La Escuela kids and parents. And in fact, I joked with Robin's Cafe, "You're going to lose a lot of money during the summer, but don't worry, we'll make up in September." We also go to Boba, which is up the street. You'll often see many middle schoolers walking there. We also go to ODC. My kids have done a number of classes there, and actually a lot of parents do classes at ODC as well. And there is a salon, and I'm just talking for personal experience, Work Salon off Mission. My kids go there. I actually got other family members to go there, and they've started to expand the community beyond the school. Lastly, there was an incident that occurred a couple years ago, a serious violent incident next to the park. And La Scuola, one of the grades, witnessed a homicide. Well, you would think that that would cause a dent in the community. But in fact, with La Scuola's administration, it brought them together. We worked with the parents, we worked with the local police department, we worked with residents, we worked with Robbins Cafe, ODC, and we developed a community. When there's something that's happening, everyone responds together. Also Mission Bowling as well, and there's a number of others that I'm forgetting. But what my daughter, who witnessed the homicide, actually embraced the mission more. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our remote callers. You may begin speaking. Eric.
Let's try to go to Harlan and see if Eric can maybe adjust his device.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you may begin speaking. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Harlan Crystal. Two of my children are students at La Scuola. One of them is 4 and one of them is 2. And I have a third child coming soon. I just wanted to state, my support for this project just because, as a resident of District 6, I feel like a lot, the way we've done the city recently, like a lot of the housing stock has been added to like the southeast part of the city. And like, we need to also invest in expansions of our schools similarly so that people can attend schools close to their home. And I support like the specific architecture that they've made. I think it's like a very good match of respecting what's there with the feel of the school. The way they talk about architecture and the classroom and the environment, it's something that they say to us. They don't just say it in the context of planning meetings. They say it to teachers and students regularly. So yeah, that's more or less what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Let's try Eric one more time.
Hi, I guess you didn't hear me the first time.
We can hear you now.
My name is Eric Tokstad. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. I'm speaking in support of the new building. I'm a parent of 2 children who have attended the school since 2014. I serve on the board of directors of the school, and I work on the facilities committee and the fundraising committee, so I'm very involved in the building. I'm a native San Franciscan and practicing architect, and I'm a homeowner in the Mission nearby since 1990. This new building carefully incorporates architectural elements that show respect to the existing neighboring St. Charles building, and it's also a response to the greater Mission neighborhood fabric with its very modern and very vibrant facade that is open and transparent to the community, which is a symbolic message that the La Scuola's pedagogy is open to the world, and we've created the 3 dimensions of that with the facade. This development will create a momentum to revitalize the presence of a vibrant school as La Scuola grows that previously existed for decades while St. Charles was open, before it closed. And enclosed, the new building will act as a symbol of progress and innovation in that La Scuola is an internationally recognized leader in education, combining the IB, the International Baccalaureate Program, the language immersion, and the Reggio Emilia pedagogy. It supports this Supporting this project signifies our commitment to honoring the past and embracing the future. And it will be a beacon for the community, the mission, and the Bay Area. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Last call for public comment. If you are here in the chambers, please come forward. Calling in remotely, press *3 or use the raise hand function. Seeing no additional requests to speak, public comment is now closed, and commissioners, the item is before you.
Thank you. Just want to thank all the speakers for coming out or calling in and being here to support the project. Certainly, the school has a lot of support. It's really great and heartwarming to hear some of the stories from the families and from the neighboring community. And really and I think it's an interesting day with the Irish Cultural Center and the school, which in many ways, as we know, are cultural centers in their own right. And certainly the kind of new life that is coming to this historic property, both with a new proposed building, as well as kind of the use and life that's been given to the existing and historic building. I just want to know, I know we did have a letter from the United Save the Mission that there had been some negotiations that have broken down. I'm just curious if the school is interested in continuing those or kind of where things stand. I think that was the only letter of opposition that we received that I noted, and just want to understand a little bit more about what's happening there.
Thank you, President Tanner. So we've been in negotiation, well, in conversation, I should say, with USM and CAIA 24 since the beginning of this project, and I think we were trying to work on a memorandum of understanding that would be one of a kind, the first they ever did with the school. We were, surprised by their opposition because we really have. With very good faith, try very hard to be in support of their request because we want to be a good neighbor and a good member of the community. And I think many of the things that they propose are things that we already were doing and want to do. I think there were a few things we could not agree on, and this was on the recommendation from our attorneys because being a 501c organization, it was against our nonprofit status and would potentially be deemed like discrimination versus certain individuals, whether they were children or employees. And so I think, we tried to get their direct feedback on this, but it didn't come until like last week, and we did not. We actually, I know that they stated that we were hiding things from them, but we actually reminded them of this hearing in good faith because we had not heard a response to our MOU. We're still committed to working with them, whatever the result today, because we know it's the right thing to do, and we want to be good neighbors and good residents of the mission.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you for that. I also wanted to hear, is it Ms. Goslick, the architect? I know you had some more slides you were going to go through. I wonder if you could give us a few minutes of some of the additional design review that you were going to give us.
Sure, absolutely.
SF Gov, can we have the TV, the projector? Thank you.
So I just have 3 slides at the end of the presentation, and they're really just trying to focus in on how the building responds to the urban design guidelines specifically. So this one focuses on the measure of the urban design guidelines that has to do with responding to the context. And I mentioned some of the things that we've done to respond to St. Charles specifically, both in color and in proportion and in the sort of zoning of the building in response to the cornice lines. The other one talks about rendering the buildings with material depth and texture, and so I think the building does this very well, both on the street facade and on what could be kind of an otherwise quite monolithic facade facing St. Charles. It's broken down into this more panelized type of expression of the stucco as well as the fenestration pattern. And then the last slide really just talks about how the transparency of the street is providing a sense of activation, transparency, and security, eyes on the street, which I think will be a really beneficial addition to the 18th Street experience.
Great. Thank you very much for that. I'm certainly looking forward to hearing from other commissioners. I I want to just say I'm very much supportive of this project, but I am concerned that the cultural district, we mentioned Calle 24, has not been able to reach an agreement yet. I know that's a third party, but we support the cultural districts here as a city, and they're kind of a creature established by the city. And so I do wonder if the commissioners are interested in having more time for this project. I know, unfortunately, this is our last hearing until September, and so I know that's quite a long break. Usually we would have a week or two or, intervening meetings, but if folks are interested in continuance to see if any more progress can be made, or if we can even hear directly as a commissioner from the culture district, I certainly would be interested in staff reaching out to Calle 24 and understanding if they are aware of this project and if they have, and just getting something directly from them. I know they work closely with USM, but I would be interested in the cultural district specifically giving us some feedback on this. With that, I'm going to call on Commissioner Imperial and then Commissioner Diamond.
Thank you, President Tenor, for mentioning that. I think I'll be more interested in putting it as a condition of approval for the city to facilitate a conversation between the Calle 24 and La Escuela. And yeah, that will be my part of the condition. Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Diamond?
I'm very supportive of this project. I did have a concern about the traffic issues, but now that they have agreed to the condition that was imposed in the draft last Thursday, which takes sort of a semi-informal approach and making it a condition that allows the city to monitor the traffic issues, I am in support of the project. I am not sure, based upon what was said, that more time is going to allow them to get to an agreement. I heard a general commitment to working on the issues that were raised, and cultural district chose not to show up at this hearing, and so I'm not inclined to want to continue it, especially to September at this point in time.
Thank you. Commissioner Ruiz?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Diamond. I don't think I'm inclined to continue the project. I would have loved to have heard the Cultural District or United to Save the Mission call in today to speak in more detail about some of the issues that they've had. But I just want to say how sentimental I got with the testimony from the mom, because I don't think we often think about the positive impact schools have on our neighborhoods, especially to our neighboring businesses and to neighboring organizations like ODC. So that was definitely an eye-opening testimony for myself. And now that I'm a mom, I just was so much more emotional about some of the things that the mom said about how the school came together with some of the incidents that they've seen in the neighborhood, because I used to live on 17th and Folsom, and there are for sure challenges in that area. And how can we come together as a community, and how can our institutions in the neighborhood really educate our young people, because they're so susceptible to all of the different things that happen around them. How can we educate them and instill compassion? So I think that's really wonderful. But can we, I think this is a question for staff, can we include a condition of approval that La Escuela has conversations with the
Yeah, I think the way to frame it is to basically require the planning department to basically facilitate a meeting between the cultural district or, surrounding community groups and the project sponsor. And we can do it in the operation condition of the motion and basically add it on as an item here. So if the commission is so inclined, you could approve it with that condition in mind.
Would that be a one-time meeting? How would we structure that? Like that there would be a meeting sometime in 2023, or?
Yeah, I think you can set a time frame on it, so that way then I think I'll say the staff understand the general intent of where the commission is going with this, and so we'll work with the sponsor. And it sounds like they've been pretty open towards meeting with their community group, so even if it needs to go beyond the one meeting, I'm sure the sponsor is willing to do that.
Okay.
I'm also not sure I'm understanding what the issues were, and I don't know if the project sponsor is comfortable sort of detailing some of the things that the community wanted to see that were not able to be agreed upon. I don't know if it's appropriate for the project sponsor to detail, but I would love to have a better understanding.
I think we have a slide that describes a little bit more at the end, if we can pull it up.
SF Gov, can we have the TV? Thank you.
Well, I think actually this describes more of our relationship and outreach and the number of times we have met with the Kaya 24. So we met with both USM and Kaya 24. Maybe sorry, I wasn't specific about that. So we met with Eric as well. He was always at the meetings. And really, as I mentioned, the MOU they sent us, I feel that we pretty much agreed to everything except those things that our attorney said we could not agree to. So it was not really the will of the school. Again, some of them were related to allocating financial aid only to students from that neighborhood. And we obviously have a lot of students in the neighborhood that are on our financial aid package, but we couldn't exclude other students of other parts of the city or different ethnicities because that is in violation of discrimination laws. And the same, the other point was making the space available to neighborhood organizations, and because we are a nonprofit and we're also renting from the Archdiocese that is a nonprofit, we can only give that to nonprofit organizations, and they wanted that to be like a larger, broader, statement. So these were some of the things we know it was difficult for us to agree to, and there was also an idea of allowing unhoused individuals on the school property, which we really are committed to be kind, and we have been extremely. I think we've done our very best to not be unkind to the unhoused neighbors that we have. But sometimes where drug use is involved or things happen that are really upsetting to children, we had to resort to get help, and so it was unfortunate. So again, this highlights the meetings we have had, and we have been in conversation. We're very happy to have another meeting with them with your help if you feel that's necessary. But we are committed to working with them. Some of their, I think some of their goals, from what the attorneys have told us, is not part of our mission as a nonprofit, and so we cannot make that our goal as an organization. We are a school, we educate young children. We want them to be open to the world and kind, and we do a lot of community work so that we know our children are out in the street. We encourage them to take the bus home, to be in the neighborhood. And even what our parents shared earlier, after the incident, you can imagine that most of our parents asked that we basically build a wall. And we still kept our, fence on 18th Street open, with some plants, because we don't want to shut the community out. And I don't believe the building walls is the solution to solve problems.
Thank you very much.
I hope that helps.
Yes, thank
Thanks.
you. I would just say, Commissioner Rees, myself hearing that, I'm comfortable with asking for the meeting, in part because I want our staff to be aware of, even if it's not agreement, but among cultural district and other community partners, so that we are not hearing things secondhand. Not that it's secondhand, but just we can be there. And if agreement can't be made, that's fine. I think this project is really great and happy to support it. Did you have any further questions or comments you wanted to add?
Nope, that I am supportive. So as long as we include the conditions that planning staff help facilitate a meeting with the project sponsor in the community, and hopefully that a good neighbor agreement can be established.
Did you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you, Monica Giacomucci, department staff. Somebody mentioned earlier sort of tying a timeline to that condition. So just before a motion is made, I thought perhaps we could revisit that. So if there's any sort of timing aspect you want to tie to that meeting,
I would assume it'd be sometime before the end of 2023
Sure,
that
okay.
meeting would occur.
Okay.
So the next, 5 months we've got left?
Okay, great. Thanks.
Commissioner Braun?
I'm also supportive of the project, but I also support adding the condition about the planning department facilitating the meeting by the end of the year. And our approvals can be appealed, so I think it is in the interest of the project sponsor to continue to work very closely with the cultural district and other neighborhood organizations. But having said that, I will make a motion to approve the conditional use authorization, adding the condition that the planning department facilitates a meeting between the project sponsor and the cultural district or other community and other community organizations. We can finesse that language in how staff writes it up before the end of 2023.
Does it also include the changes that staff read into the record today, your motion?
So that actually was included in your
In the
packet
packet,
last week, so no need to read that into the record.
Okay, great.
I do want to check, does planning department staff have any concerns about that or any need for clarification? Okay.
Nope, Sounds
Second.
Sorry. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm going to read this back, and please let me know if I missed anything. There's been a motion that has been seconded to approve with conditions, with the additional condition requiring the Planning Department to facilitate a meeting between the community and the cultural district with the project sponsor in hopes of a good neighbor policy to be made. This meeting shall be made prior to the end of 2023.
Sorry, Monica Giacomucci again. Just want to clarify, there's a cultural district, but then United to Save the Mission is not cultural district, and they're involved in this conversation as well. So.
I said the community.
Oh, you did?
I can specify between the community groups and the cultural district with the project sponsor. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so on that motion, Commissioner Braun.
Sorry, Commissioner Diamond has a comment or question.
Could the project sponsor indicate if they have any concerns with that condition as read into the record?
Do you have any concerns with the condition of meeting with the cultural district with a meeting in this case to be facilitated by the planning department?
Maybe excuse my ignorance if I don't know the timing of this. The only worry that I have is we were hoping to start construction in January because for two reasons. We're also engaged with the builder. That's why the union representatives were here. So they're hoping to start.
You still have your approval of our entitlement is still
that's
approved, but the condition is that you would, before the end of the year, the planning department would facilitate a meeting between yourself and.
But then everything else can go ahead because we can.
As fast as the building department can get you your building permit. Yeah.
No, of course. Yeah. So that was my only concern, to make sure that the people that are expecting to work can work and that we don't run out of space for children.
Absolutely.
So no concern otherwise. Thank you.
This is just a condition to meet. There is no obligation for any result out of the meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you could meet tomorrow if you wanted to and satisfy the
We
condition.
would, but I don't, we can't force the other party to come to the meeting. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm going to read it one more time. There's been a motion that has been seconded to approve with conditions, with the additional condition requiring the Planning Department to facilitate a meeting between the community groups, the cultural district, and the project sponsor in hopes of a good neighbor policy to be made. This meeting shall be made prior to the end of 2023.
Yes.
On that motion, Commissioner Braun?
Aye.
Commissioner Ruiz?
Aye.
Commissioner Diamond?
Aye.
Commissioner Imperial?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
And Commission President Tanner?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously and will now take us to your discretionary review calendar.
Thank you. While folks are leaving and we're getting to the 615 Sanchez, I just want to say I know we had heard kind of out of order request, concern about continuance. I understand staff may have had a request for continuance from Ms. Hester. We're not clear if she is or isn't representing somebody, and so my inclination would be to hear the item with the folks who are present here. There are two DR requesters, and then if at the end of that the commission is inclined to continue it because one DR requester is not present or their attorney isn't present, we could consider it after hearing from those who are present, because I do see a number of people, like one DR requester, for example, is on the phone line. I know we have people in the chamber. So unless there's any objections from the commission to that, that's how I'd like to proceed.
May I update about Ms. Hester?
Sorry, hold on. We're not ready yet.
We will.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll now call the item number 18 for record number 2022-009006 DRP-02 at 615 Sanchez Street. And staff, we will now hear from you.
Good afternoon, President Tanner, members of the Commission. Trent Greenan, Staff Architect. The item before you is a public-initiated request for discretionary review of building permit application number 2022-0908.2052 to construct a 553-square-foot third-story vertical addition and a 204-square-foot addition to an existing ADU of a single-family dwelling. The existing building is a Category C with no historic resource presence, built in 2002. There are two DR requesters. The first, Sammy Host of J.W. Sanchez, LLC, of 617 Sanchez Street, which is the adjacent property to the south, is concerned that the proposed project is not consistent with the neighborhood pattern of rear building heights, offsets, and setbacks. His proposed alternatives are to look at the opportunity to expand within the existing building volume to eliminate the need for vertical expansion. The second, Ugo Gatri of 619 Sanchez Street, the neighbor to the south, is concerned that the project represents major construction that would have noise, dust, and congestion impacts to the neighborhood. To date, the department has received no letters in opposition and 5 letters in support of the project. Staff supports the proposed addition as it complies with the residential design guidelines and is within the buildable area of the lot. The additional massing of the proposal above the existing roof parapet is minimal and modulates the building height to step with the topography. DR requester number 1 at 617 Sanchez has an approved permit to demolish the existing detached garage and the non-complying 2-story single-family dwelling at the rear of the lot and construct a new 4-story single-family house with an ADU. The size and scale of the subject building at 615 Sanchez with its addition is similar to the proposed new construction at 617 Sanchez. The rear wall of the proposed addition aligns with the corresponding level of the approved plan for the 4-story building on the adjacent uphill neighbor at 617 Sanchez. The subject building also has a voluntary 4-foot side setback, further buffering the property from its neighbor. A variance granted in 1998 to allow construction in front and rear setbacks stipulated through a notice of special restriction that any future additions to this property would need to seek and justify variance. The variance was heard on April 26, 2023, and a decision is pending the determination from the zoning administrator. None of the issues related to construction rise to the threshold of exceptional or extraordinary, nor are they within the planning department's purview to monitor or regulate. Therefore, staff deems there are no exceptional and extraordinary circumstances and recommends not taking discretionary review and approving the project. Thank you. I'm available for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from DR requester number 1.
Hi, good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Sammy Hose.
Please speak into the microphone.
Oh,
Thank you,
sorry.
just so we can all hear.
Okay. I'm Sammy Hose. I'm directly adjacent neighbor at 617 Sanchez. I oppose this variance application on the basis that there are no exceptional or extraordinary circumstances. Furthermore, the proposed project violates the intent of the original variance from 1999 and is not consistent with the surrounding neighborhood pattern of real building heights, offsets, and setbacks. While I'm sympathetic to the project sponsor's need to increase the number of bedrooms for their family, I believe there are other ways that have not been explored that would be more consistent with the prevailing pattern of adjacent homes. For example, when developing my own home next door at 617 Sanchez, I worked very hard with the neighbors and the planning staff to incorporate a series of rear setbacks at the upper floors. The proposed project before you completely ignores these established setbacks, and the proposed vertical addition creates a hulking 4-story mass at the expense of the neighborhood. When I approached the project sponsor to request a modest rear setback on the upper floor, my concerns were ignored, and I was told that the resulting primary bedroom would be too small. I should note that the 4th floor primary bedroom as proposed would be almost 20 feet long by 15 feet wide, which is massive by established residential standards. I would suggest the project sponsor consider a far less impactful approach, which would be to expand over their double-height living room. This would be a far more economical solution and would provide the additional bedroom they are seeking. It would also be completely contained within the existing envelope without need for the vertical addition, a variance, or further impact to the neighborhood. When granting variances and approving projects, it's important that these buildings be considered for the next 50, 100 years, not just the next 5 to 10 years. Thank you for your time and hearing my concerns.
Thank you. DR requester number 2, I see that you're on WebEx. We will unmute you now, and you will have 5 minutes.
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Hugo Catry. I'm the resident at 619 Sanchez, where I live with my wife. First, let me also acknowledge that Dave and Gina, the owners of 615 Sanchez, are good neighbors, and we are glad they moved in last year, and we are genuinely happy their family is growing. Nevertheless, we have some major concerns about their extension project. We believe the vertical addition at the top of the existing structure will cause a significant privacy concern. The new space will look directly down upon our living room, our bedroom downstairs, as well as in our backyard. This will considerably reduce the privacy of our home. We are also puzzled regarding the motivation of this extension, as Sue mentioned it. The Commission brief states that the extension is necessary to accommodate their growing family. This house is already one of the largest homes on the block, if not the largest. The house stands at 4,000 square feet with lots of wasted space that could be repurposed rather than extending this giant grey bunker which already stands out in the neighborhood. And to conclude, after listening to these hearings today, it's clear to me that the need for housing in San Francisco is critical. I believe the city needs more new multifamily constructions and more density, so everyone has a chance to live in the city and not just tech millionaires on Dolores Heights. In our street and in the surrounding blocks, there have been about half a dozen house extensions and never any construction disturbance since we moved in 2 years ago. Yet, none of these new constructions have added any new housing to this neighborhood. And like the other ones, we don't understand how this extension to the already largest home on the block will help the city of San Francisco achieve its housing goals. Thank you for listening to me today, Commissioners.
Thank you. We will now hear from the project sponsor.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brett Gladstone. I'd like to introduce my clients.
Hi, Commissioners. Thanks for your time this evening. It's a long day. My name is Dave. This is my wife, Jenna. We are the homeowners at 615 Sanchez and longtime residents of the neighborhood. We have a growing family. We have a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, and we are very excited about raising them in this amazing city. Today, we're trying to expand our home to fit our family. So now I'll hand it over to our attorney, Brett. Thank you.
Thank you. Earlier during the continuance, I said I hadn't heard from Ms. Hester, and I hadn't. But later today, she did call me, and she told me that she was out of the hospital. She's recovering at home, and she's feeling better. But she won't be representing either of the DR requesters. I'd like to introduce Glinda Fine, who's also Italian, and is the architect of this project. First, I want to thank the neighbors for their support. I wanted to mention back in February 20 of 2022, your projector, please. February 2022, your commission approved the DR requester next door for a project of 4,028 square feet. Our project top floor, by the way, is a little smaller than her top floor. Next door, the property is owned by an LLC, and I know you heard that DR requester plans to live there. It's a little confusing to me because she's told my clients, and my clients have told me that she created an LLC to develop it and sell it. The non-adjacent owner, of course, has only stated a concern tonight and in the paperwork about construction noise. In an email dated September 22, the adjacent DR requester asked my clients to, quote, share the beautiful view with me, unquote, and you see that in the overhead, referring to the more than 200-degree view that future occupants of her place will have in the unbuilt four-story building. Even if views were protected, which, as you know, they're not, the adjacent DR requesters' future occupants will have a great view, at least 180 degrees in many directions other than the north. To preserve the view, the adjacent DR requester made two requests. First, asked my client to create a setback at the fourth floor, you'll see here, so that the views are improved. And when my clients didn't agree to that because it would shorten their bedroom so much, she asked that the floor be eliminated and that an interior interstitial floor be created in the double height living room. My clients looked into that. They had their engineers write a letter, which is before you and in your exhibits, talking about the difficulties and expense of doing that. Also, the 5-foot deck would introduce direct views from the adjacent or DR requester's fourth floor into my client's bedroom and vice versa. Also, the fourth floor of the DR requester's approved building has a deck which would allow significant views back into project sponsor's bedroom. Lastly, having an open deck would create noise that I think the DR requester or the occupants would not be comfortable with. Despite DR requester's statement that the project's not consistent with the existing pattern of rear building setbacks, this drawing overhead will show the proposed new fourth floor is aligned with the fourth floor setback that you approved next door for DR requester. It also shows that floors 1 through 3 of my client's existing building are also aligned with DR requester's fourth floor. And our 3 first floors are a full 11 feet less steep in the lot than the DR requester's floors 1 through 3. The attached aerial photograph overhead shows that my client's building protrudes less deeply into its lot than all the neighborhood houses to the south protrude into their respective lots, including DR requester's own approved building. To minimize the proposed vertical addition, my clients proposed to place the addition on the existing roof deck, which already has tall parapet walls, some as tall as 5 feet, which you'll see there. So the building's profile from many angles already appears to have at least half of a fourth floor addition. DR requester stated that creating the infill floor would be less expensive than putting up a fourth floor, but she hasn't indicated that in any way, how that works. To the contrary, the letter I showed you from our engineer indicates all the structural problems and how costly it would be. And of course, creating an interstitial floor would be so disruptive to the building, my clients would not be able to live there during construction in any portion of the building. My client's lot is 75% larger than the DR requester's lot, yet my client's proposed building has a square footage that's only 24% larger. And keep in mind, I think contrary to what one of the DR requesters said, the clients have a 2-unit building. The DR requester at 619 mentioned there'll be views into the side windows. And I don't know if we show that, but we don't understand where those windows are. And maybe you can point out here. Those are our side windows that would look into.
This one is the only south-facing window that is not even above the neighbor.
So that's one south-facing window, the only one that could potentially look into the DR requester at 619's home. As you can see from our exhibits, the size meets the Mandelman Special Use District ordinance that many of the neighbors proposed, and with the feeling that in this neighborhood and those around it, buildings were too massive. Of course, it complies with that, and the ADU complies with the ADU restrictions of the code, and that's shown here in a chart, which is also in your exhibits. Excuse me a minute. So, I think I just want to end with a couple of comments First of all, the adjacent neighbor to the north would be concerned about an interstitial floor that would reduce his privacy. You may be hearing from him. Just in sum, we feel that the requester's proposed rear setback would protect a small portion of her future occupants' northeasterly views, and none of its expansive easterly and southern views would be reduced. And it would preserve the northeasterly views at the expense of the privacy of both homes. And we do reject the idea of a setback as a result. And thank you very much for your time. We have 2 minutes, and the architect is here if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll waive the rest of our time.
Thank you. We will now open this up for public comment. Members of the public who are here today, please come forward. Those calling in remotely, please press *3 or use the raised hand function via WebEx.
Hi, my name's Scott Goldman. I'm David's neighbor just across the street to the west. So like when I walk out my front door, I'm looking directly at his home. Just the first thing I wanted to say was there's like a big tree in front of the house. So his roof deck's not really visible from the street, and any kind of like addition he would build above it, at least the amount he's talking about, really wouldn't be visible. There's a really eclectic mix of housing styles on that street. I know one a couple houses down, they always call it the iPhone house. It has like a bunch of like weird porthole windows. I don't really feel like David's house is like that strange in the neighborhood. I also don't really feel like building it the couple extra feet he's talking about is really changing anything in terms of like the neighborhood character. It definitely wouldn't affect me living in my house at all. Also, it seems funny to complain about the construction because there's at least 3 or 4 houses on the block under construction. So there's just always construction. I don't know. You live in a city. Isn't that how it's supposed? I don't know. But anyway, all that to say, David's a great neighbor. He's kind of made it his personal mission to like clean up the Sanchez steps, which are just perpetually full of random detritus. I would love for him to have a house where his family could have separate bedrooms. Yeah, I mean, it seems reasonable to me. And this is one of my first experiences with like public hearing processes around building. I'm sure you hear this a lot. It is kind of upsetting, like how much anyone can just step in and tell someone they can't change something in their house. But I guess that's how it works. But yeah, all that to say, I support David's construction, and yeah, I'll see the rest of my time.
Thank you. Last call for public comment. Seeing no additional requests to speak. Oh. Please come forward and line up on the screen side of the room if you plan to speak. Please start.
Hi, so my name's David Leeson. I live at 601 Sanchez, which is the property directly bordering on the north side of 615. I've lived there since 1994 with my wife, Joanne. We were there originally for the original variance that was required for the construction in 2002. I have to say I agree with some of the sentiments that have been expressed around the large size of properties developed in this area. But I am in support of this particular development. I think it's a step in the right direction, adding more bedrooms to this large property, therefore kind of justifying the larger size of the property. It's better to have a 2-bedroom large property, a 4-bedroom large property than a 2-bedroom large property, so I can only support it in that respect. I am in opposition to the alternative proposal that has been put forward to build the property build more bedrooms within the property, particularly on the northern side. As I said, it was present during the original variance hearings. And the intent of the original variance, the original variance was mostly required because of the setback on the northern side of the property. So to say that the setback was an exception there, and then to add additional rooms overlooking my property on the northern side is not really within the spirit of the original variance. And this is why we have these variance hearings, is to make sure that the original, the terms and the spirit of the original variance are observed. So I think building additional bedrooms on the northern property would be against that intent, and such bedrooms would be directly overlooking my bedroom and my kitchen directly into my yard. So I'd be against that. So overall, I'm supporting the original proposal, and I'm against the alternative that's been proposed by the developers at 615.
Thank you.
Last call for public comment. If you're calling in remotely, press *3 or use the raised hand function via WebEx. Seeing no additional requests to speak, we will now have a rebuttal from DR requester number 1. You have 2 minutes. Okay, thank you. We will now move on to DR requester number 2. Do you wish to have your rebuttal for 2 minutes?
No, I waive my time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And project sponsor, do you wish to use your rebuttal time?
Thank you. My client asked me to clarify something. DR requester number, was it 1 or 2? The one who lives at the non-adjacent property has told you that there'll be a privacy issue, but we just looked at the plans again, and there's only one south-facing window that he would look at, and that's a bathroom window, a small window at, I think, above high level. And my client just wanted me to clarify that. By the way, I've talked to Tina Tam, the acting zoning administrator, and she'll take under advisement, and we'll hear back from her about issuing the variance. But if you have any questions about the variance, I'm happy to answer them. The important thing to know is, why are we requesting a variance today? It's not because we're doing something not meeting the code. It's simply because the original variance, the one that allowed the building to be what it is today, says that if there's any future changes to the building envelope, there must be another variance. But we're not doing anything today that's not complying with the code. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now the public hearing portion of the item is closed, and the item is now before you, Commissioners.
Great. I'm glad to see it's a 2-unit building, adding space to the ADU and to the main building. Again, agree, 4 bedrooms makes more sense than 2 in a building of this size, and really is a modest increase in the scale. It doesn't really materially, I think, change the size of the primary home substantively. So I don't see any unusual and extraordinary circumstances, and would support a motion to not take DR and approve the project. Commissioner Koppel?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioners. On that motion to not take discretionary review and approve the project, on that motion, Commissioner Braun?
Aye.
Commissioner Ruiz?
Aye.
Commissioner Imperial?
Aye.
Commissioner Diamond?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
And Commission President Tanner?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously and concludes your calendars.
Great. Thank you, Commissioners. We will be back here next September 7th, if you can believe it. Something to noodle. We had 2 hearings that started at noon this week and last week. If that is something folks are interested in going forward, I understand historically prior commissions did start their hearings at noon. Obviously, I think it was actually changed because commissioners wanted to start it after they had lunch at the classic noon hour of lunch. So if folks like getting out earlier and starting earlier, I'm amenable. If folks liked what we had at 1 o'clock, I'm also amenable. So please share with me any comments, or if you're agnostic, take that into consideration as we head into the last few quarters of the year. So with that, we are adjourned to our summer recess.